Yo, we are here at the Save Yourself Tour.
Save yourself means to me to understand the different aspects of yourself and enlighten yourself.
The frequency brought me here today to get knowledge, to empower my mind, my spirit, and my soul.
So the biggest thing for me to get VIP tickets is for my son. It's important for me that he sees the power of a black man.
So this show was impactful. I could say it changed a lot of minds. I bring up my guys here today.
That's why you gotta save yourself. You know why? Because no one else is coming to save you.
If you really think about this whole entire event, to have Bostonians there.
People right now, they're hurting emotionally, they're hurting spiritually. And the key is not necessarily to always talk about the hurt. It's to connect with leaders and thought leaders that are really specific about finding the solution. And that's exactly what 19 Keys represents.
And that behavior pattern becomes a disruption. You're not as easy to control when you're confident.
Having conversations that shape culture, to have some of the rappers that are from here, like Millie, of course, JV.
Bless. Happy Pink Moon. Some platforms that you're on, they don't provide that space, to talk about science and vibrations and frequencies and resonance and stuff that I'm really passionate about. So today was fun. Today was my favorite talk.
Our brother Vic Mensa happened to be here in Harvard, and he came and shared the stage with us. We had an AI expert, and we had conversations that was around the cosmic architecture of the culture. The future is based on the present. So by shaping the minds in the present, you shape the future, right? Because you're able to help train its behavior. So what happens next? Peace, family. It's 19 Keys. Thank you for watching High Level Conversations. We want to continue to be the best show in the world, so we need your support for that. So if you enjoy this conversation, if you enjoy the value of this channel and the rest of these high-level conversations, please help spread the word. If you haven't already, please leave a 5-star review, and the best reviews we will screenshot and post on our high-level conversation page, and you will win one of many gifts that we have. We also need you to like and we need you to comment so we can be at the top of the algorithm. We're building out the platform that's going to take the culture forward. And every conversation is a piece of the puzzle so that we can elevate the consciousness of the world. Whether you're a small business or a big business, we have different packages that you can come in and help sponsor episodes so we can take things to the highest level. Now, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but if this is an exciting offer for you, then go to 19keys.com/HLC so that you can join the high level team. I appreciate you for being here, and I appreciate you for watching this episode. Continue to stay high level.
So, without further ado, I want Boston to get on their feet because they haven't been too energetic. Come on, get up. Get up on your feet, Boston. Yo, because I'm going to tell you, this brother came from a long way. Y'all made way for my brother, the new age thought leader. I call him Malcolm X with money. That's what I call him. Bring out my brother 19 Keys. Let's get it. Give my brother a round of applause. Let's go.
I want it all. As a member to my balls, I want it all.
Peace to the guys. Peace to the family, man. Good to see y'all.
We deserve to be rich. We deserve to be free. We deserve to be king. She deserves to be queen. We want it all. Cause we deserve it all. I want a big.
Looking good, Boston. I appreciate y'all coming out, man. Give yourself a round of applause. Yeah. Today I wanted to talk about a few different things. Something that I believe impacts everybody, the whole entire world. Right? Because we're growing up in a new environment. Hey, my sister Adriel over there, what's up with you? I ain't seen her this whole trip. She just popped up on. It's funny that I mentioned that because it also kind of goes into the topic. So there's this idea of the more complex something becomes, the more conscious it becomes. When you're a child, you don't have your own consciousness. Whatever idea somebody feeds you becomes your thought process. And there's science that backs it up that shows that as organisms become more complex,
the consciousness starts to grow, but it doesn't just go to human beings, it goes to systems. If you look at America, America started off right to where, of course, there was no technology. It was just people, person to person, peer to peer communication, right? There was manual physical labor. There was ideas that would be spread through newspaper or through mail services. The country started to transform and become more complex as we developed telephones and we can communicate across vast distances. There was a time when people would have pen pals, somebody across the globe that they would write and wait to write back, right? Your influence was all local for the most part, which was your information environment. As time progressed, we had the internet, we had social media, we had global trade routes. Now this whole entire thing starts to become these interconnected systems. So then you start to ask yourself that the more complex something becomes, if it becomes conscious, we start to look at America as a conscious system. Now, when we're looking at consciousness, there's a few things that you have to study. The memory of that conscious system. When we look at what's going on right now with China and America, it is what you call strategic competition. But it is not physical warfare, it is conscious warfare. Anybody seen Speed in China? Streaming? That's propaganda. It's an idea, right, of which one wins, the American dream or China's vision. Right now, how many of y'all go for the American dream? Damn, man, did y'all to blood. Well, if we relate that same idea to the culture has its own memories, which is why everybody like, I don't know about that. The culture is a mind itself. Many people don't think about defining it like that, so therefore we don't end up controlling it like that. What are the main memories of the culture that we can all remember ourselves? The core memories, which are mostly traumatic memories. Black Wall Street, right? COINTELPRO, leaders dying, 60 plus towns being destroyed, consistent trauma. So how does that shape the consciousness of the culture if it's this living entity itself? So somebody asked me, who controls the culture? I said, well, it depends on who has the dominant influence. Who controls America? Well, it's a complex thing, depending on who has the dominant influence. America has scars of Cold War. It has the trauma of those in America who still remember unrepaired slavery without getting their reparations. There's ideas in America that are fighting each other. One about what the future is and one about what is the past. So if we look at the complexity of America, now we're looking at two conscious systems in entanglement with each other, trying to figure out the fight for the ideological future, meaning who philosophy wins, because China doesn't fight directly with warfare like America does. It embeds itself into systems, right? So now we've been doing all our production in China. It's embedded there. When you think about what are the core memories that you know of China, right? Bruce Lee, Rush Hour, you know what I'm saying? But when you think about it, it's not as traumatic as when you think of other places. Now, we might think of communism and things of that nature, social credit systems, depending on how educated you are. But the dominant of most people are uneducated. So their memories and ideas of a place are not that complex. So when you're fighting, that same system now goes into your individual life. We're now interconnected on our phones. We now watch streams. We now get influenced by tweets. We now get notifications on our phones that makes us feel stimulated and connected. As a people, we're going through a time in this age of what they call cognitive warfare. Anybody ever heard of cognitive warfare? It is really one of the most dangerous things to cultural security and national security on a global scale, because it is very hard to control. Most of the time, people are doing what they call system one thinking. System one thinking is just like your automatic thinking, right? As soon as you see something, you respond. You know to walk outside, look at traffic, not to go into certain places, right? System two thinking is a little different. That's when you take time to think about something, right? Which is a much slower response system. Your auto thinking is about 100 million times faster. Now, when we on social media, most of the time, we're not stopping to think to process anything. So anything can get past our unconscious thinking and we can believe that it's true. So when you talk about warfare, your goal is to try to figure out how do I get to put people to believe something that isn't true. For a reason that I want to control and socially engineer them. When I look at the culture, we talk about the big three. Everybody know who the big three is? Yeah. Who the big three? Well, I act like y'all know that. I don't get boogie style on me. Who the big three? Yeah. Right? Okay. Okay. Let's talk about Cole. Talk about Kendrick. Talk about Drake. At least that's the narrative, right? There's an idea about narrative warfare. Whichever one dominates the ideas that you believe. Now, what's the big five? The big five have more influence on the culture than any rapper ever has. The big five are the tech companies. Yeah. Here in Boston, this is home of intelligence, right? Y'all got MIT, y'all got Harvard, you got Cambridge Analytica, right? You have so many different things, but now we're living in a time where most people don't actually control what they think. Most people don't really know what the truth is. They just know what data that came to them that they scrolled for a minute and they kept going and they took no time to do any research, which means that one part of the room can have an idea about what happened. Another part of the room can have an idea. This top section, depending on what comes to their phone, this section, this mid section, everybody can have a completely different world. So that if you want to get into an organization, your first thing is, how do I get into the minds of the people that belong to that organization? How do you break up a family? You think about the people that's in that family, right? And how do I embed ideas into the children, into the friends that they know? So in cognitive security, they're always thinking about what are the layers of security that we have. Now, I think about that as the culture because I say there's a possibility that we can shape the future, but we don't ask enough theoretical questions to shape the future. Today, if I ask y'all, what is the future? Somebody tell me, what's the main theme of the future right now?
AI.
AI. Why is it AI? Because that's what dominates your screens. Now, my question for you, and this is a futurist example. We look into the future and we ask what ifs. So you're looking forward and you're activating a memory that you have in the future. The best memory that you have in the future. I want everybody to take a second and I want you to think about it. It's a what if. Activate it as if you're looking back. You already passed it. And you're thinking back like this is my memory of the future that came true. 99% of people never do this in their life at all. So they never have control over the future because they never decide the direction the future is going. You're always looking for information on the future and what is it going to be. But now we're at a time where we have to focus on how do we control it because currently, do we like the way things are going? No. No. So that means that you now have to disrupt the memories, number one, that you have within yourself on a personal level. Then you have to look at what is the core memory of your family. Is it a traumatic memory, right, that you all have collectively? Because most of the time we have traumas that we remember, which starts to decide the consciousness and the character of that family. If we think about Boston, what is one of the core memories of Boston? You say camping trip? No, championship. Championship, okay. Yeah. Okay. That's a good core memory. You got that one unlocked. So complexity is defined by a range of internal systems: music, language, education, economics, spirituality, fashion, and media. The more intricate and interwoven these systems are, the higher the culture's cognitive capacity. Now, let's look at music. Hip-hop is America's music. That's the main music in America that trends. So now you see social influence and how it engineers the people to think a certain way. That becomes your information environment, the frequencies that get embedded into you. Now let's look at language. When you go on Twitter, is the language that people are using, is it divisive or is it united language? Divisive, right? Now let's look at economics. It's hard to look at economics. I don't know what the hell going on. Everybody been asking about terror. I went to the barbershop. You understand me? And the Javanian and the Haitians stopped talking. You feel me? About what's my brother that just did the concert? Cartel. They stopped talking about him to ask me about terrorists. They said, "You's a businessman, you know the terrorists, right?" Goddamn. So now they got everybody thinking about it, but there's more confusion there is clarity, right? So that means that the nation consciously is confused about whether this is a good or bad thing, and most people are choosing to rock behind their leader regardless because they don't know. They say, whatever he's doing, I'm just going to go with. But economically, people are projecting that there's going to be a recession, right? Now, if you project there's going to be a recession, people believe it, and there ends up being a recession, and then later on a depression. Now let's look at spirituality. And you can think about your personal spirituality. You know what I mean? How you be meditating and wear the waist beads. You feel me? You know what's going on. Now let's think about America's spirituality. Is America's spirituality high? What is America's spirituality? There's a fight between this religion. Is Islam? Is it Christianity? Right? And I'm always asking myself, I said, if Jesus and Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, ever met, they would be friends, because they were both revolutionaries that went against elites and empires. Yet they followers fight. Which is a crazy idea, because if you strip the Bible from its theological ideas, you look at it from a political lens, and you say this was a man that went against an empire. He didn't like the rule of the nation, of the government. Same thing with Prophet Muhammad. He went against the elites of his time. But the problem is most people are not rooted in understanding and studying of something. They just have blind faith. On social media, we think that what the technology tells us is real. That's why they had to come up with campaigns for MDMA, right? Misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. They had to start telling people things weren't real because we just accepted things. They had to start putting these labels on it because we think when somebody is popular and they go viral that they're telling the truth. That means now that everybody can be tricked and manipulated. And the goal of the marketers, they figured this out a very long time ago. That if we could manipulate people to believing ideas and immerse them in a reality by storytelling, then we can get them to buy our product that's connected to the feeling that we give them. Now, Americans have become the biggest consumers on the planet. The biggest consumers on the planet. That means that we have a very low consciousness because we're easily swayed and influenced to overconsume because we're not fulfilled. Now, let's look at fashion. Fashion is an interesting one, right? Especially if, you follow Kanye West right now. Like the most influential fashion, so I don't know where it's going based on his last outfit. But if we're looking at fashion, we don't even know how to dress for the time period that we're living in anymore. There was a time where you can look at the 90s, right? And you would see baggy clothes and cross colors. And then you can look at the 80s and the 70s. You see flared pants. In the 60s, and you see suits. But if somebody say dress for the 2020s, you can put on anything. So we lost time identity as well, consciously. We don't know where we're going, right? Everybody is just pulling from sources because we're influenced by everything. So there's no identity and there's no language to conceptualize the time that we're living in. So we're not saying we're in the 2020s. Now, I would say, you put on some of this good A1 futuristic plastics right here. These are 2020s. When they tell you what black man got going on in the future, you feel me, just show them a picture of it. Now let's look at media. I know we go rank high in media. What about the American media? Does it cause clarity or does it cause chaos?
Chaos. Yeah.
What about black media? Clarity or chaos?
Chaos.
Chaos. So the consciousness is low. When the consciousness is low, you're easily manipulated. These are things that we have to control. And that not only goes towards the culture, again, it goes towards the country, it goes towards your family. If you look at the music that your children are listening to, right? You look at the music that your woman is listening to or your man is listening to. Each one of these are small metric points of data that will influence you in a certain way, a certain atmosphere, how you dress, your fashion, your music, your language, every single piece of this starts to develop your consciousness and your identity. See, growing up, they didn't really give us all these metrics so that we could understand these things. So we think that just this passive behavior that we have, passive scrolling on the phone. Humans have a thing called mirror neurons, that we mirror the things that we see, right? Not only that, you have biofields, right? Neuroscience shows that when you walk into a room, you can tell if there's a weird vibe in here, right? Like, I walked in, the energy kind of off. Was y'all arguing before I got here? What happens is your brainwave starts to sync with the environment. So you start to feel that way. So if it's a negative room, now the vibes is off. That's human language though, right? But when somebody starts talking and speaking like you're human, we kind of make fun of them. Utilizing the word vibes. They call that hippies. But that's because they start taking psychedelics and they jumped off the program. And they start feeling like human beings. And they wanted to rebel against the state. Music is a very powerful frequency that shapes how you feel and think about yourself. It rings a bell constantly over and over and in your head. And if it's not affirming, right, it's hard for you to fight against something that you're doing purposely. So you telling yourself, oh, it ain't influencing me. Every single day you're listening to it and saying yes to it. And you're in a relaxed state, which means your guards are down. So now when that's in your relationship and the music you listening to is, man, fuck that nigga or fuck that bitch, right? And y'all supposed to have a sustained, happy, long marriage. Don't make no sense. But then if you got workers that work for you, and every song is telling them, or the media, the content they listening to is telling them to quit their job, I don't think they're gonna want to work for you too long. It's not a reinforcing, positive, affirming information environment. Right? So now companies have to watch out for these internal threats as well, because somebody could be scrolling and watching content and you don't know where that information came from. Maybe it came from Russia or China. Maybe they want to break up the family unit because they realize that if they're strong families, it's a strong nation. Maybe it's the opposite. It's constantly happening all around us, but we don't have a lot of cognitive defense systems because we're not thinking about it. And we're now at the state where the world is the loneliest ever.
Teach.
Loneliness. Don't you know loneliness is like smoking 15 packs of cigarettes? And when people are lonely, what they start doing? Smoking. So now it's like 30 packs. Then the loneliness starts smoking on you. Put you in a pack. And when you are lonely, you have social disconnection. You stop learning how to communicate as well. So the rewards with communicating, your ability to network, to form good relationships with others, which are directly correlated to your wealth and your finances. The number one fear for people is public speaking. And it's getting worse. We don't mind being interconnected online, but in real life, we stare into the eyes of a camera more than we do to a human eye. So when we talk about mirror neurons, we are mirroring machines and algorithms. It's the will of the algorithm versus the will of God. Who are you doing it for now? It used to be the male gaze or the female gaze. Now it's the machine gaze. If I am rewarded for this behavior, it makes me want to do it over and over and over and over again. It's a control mechanism, but who's rewarding the behavior? There's so many people that have agendas that are set out there. Sometimes it's hackers, it's other states, it's companies. How do you know when you are susceptible? Number one, if you are part of the population that is stressed out and have anxiety and low education, you're easier to manipulate. So now you would start profiling within the family and saying, damn, my son been stressed out and depressed. That's a danger to the family. You have an organization where 20% of your employees are stressed. Now somebody can come in and co-opt their mind to do things, to sell information if they want to disorganize and create chaos. And they become agents of chaos. Now in a country, if most people are obese, most people are lonely, most people are stressed out, depressed, and suicide rates at an all-time high, the American people are the easiest to manipulate today, worldwide. So you start asking, what's the future of America? We got to create different memories. We have to be intentional futurists. And if without the intentionality, whether it's the person receiving the information or the person giving the information, there's going to be a chaotic world that continues to brew. See, in some places, I visit Japan. They tell me I need to stop saying that because I bring it up all the time now, no matter what I'm doing. I was in Japan this one time. There was so much impressive stuff out there. You know, man, no matter what it is, I just bring it up. But I was in Japan. And one thing I really loved about it is their culture is like a technology. You know what I mean? They use it to reaffirm, and it becomes a mental defense system for outside modernism, meaning that they don't want the ideas of the world to influence them, right? They have something they call Bushido and Budo. They consistently embed it everywhere. It created an information environment of how the shogun practiced or the wisdom of the ancient samurais. So essentially, their culture is based on wisdom and the vision of Bushido. Now they're having a fight to try to figure out, how do we stop cognitive warfare from coming over here? How do we control and create a cognitive defense system? But they have it in, how many brothers in here? Says I know y'all watched it too, but watch Dragon Ball Z. Yeah. That was one of the most powerful cartoons, animes we watched growing up. Every episode I wanted to whoop somebody. You feel me? It makes you feel like a warrior, that you had honor, that you could have resilience, that everything that you went through was for something, right? These are ideas that it embedded. Now think about your favorite American cartoon. On Cartoon Network, somebody give me one.
SpongeBob.
SpongeBob. What the hell SpongeBob talking about? He's a sponge. His friend a starfish. And they eat hamburgers all day. So they intentionally actually utilize like Dragon Ball Z anime characters politically, right? When they wanted to get ideas across to the public or to children, right? They're now in like a post-surrealism effect that they have going on where people want to dress up as characters because being human is not enough in like the Eastern world and Asia and Japan and China and different places, which I think America is probably going to head there as well. Today we're going to be having conversations, right, with some powerful people that are of culture, people that are scientists when it comes to the AI world that can give us the game, to where we can control our culture, we can control our minds, our family minds, our business minds, and we can utilize this technology as a useful thing versus we're being used by it. You don't want it to become your mirror. You want to utilize it to optimize self. And you don't want to start thinking of yourself as a machine, because we're souls, we're spirits, right? We have more than a brain. We have a gut. We have a heart. We have different ways that we process information. But when we think about the machine replacing us because it can think as if that's the only way that we process, that's because we went to schools that became data centers that programmed us with codes so that we can get jobs for human capital. But when you decrease the attention, the human capital is not that willful, not that productive. You're not worth that much. So now you get replaced by a machine that go through data centers and trained on humans. It's a cold game. Now who gonna tax the robots? Right. If I replace the workplace with robots, surely there should be a tax on the labor. Yeah, I don't get too deep. And that's just getting into the complexity of it. Then we start talking about the memory, the historical awareness encoded in stories, archives. Now, how many people have seen really dope black film or show? I mean, you just knew it was going to get greenlit for a second season. And it just never came back. The problem is it starts to reinforce certain archetypes and beliefs and ideas, right? We can't have that. It's not that it didn't work. It was working too well. Because you embed certain images, videos, ideas, stories are immersive. When you're watching the story, you start binging. Why? You're connected to it. You're in this world. It has a certain color to it. It has a certain texture, right? that has ancestral memory connected to it. So if we change the stories that are told to you, then your behavior shifts. And that behavior pattern becomes a disruption. You're not as easier to control when you're confident. You're easier to control when you have insecurities and fears and worries and doubts. So that means that we have to greenlight our own ideas and storytelling. Otherwise, we are actively participating in cognitive warfare against ourselves, against each other. By not practicing adding to this memory field ideas that are positive, that reinforce our beliefs in self, and particularly the future. Octavia Butler, one of the first Black futurists ever, she asked a lot of what-if questions because it allowed you to see yourself in the future. That means it gives you hope. When you have hope and aspiration, right, it makes you controlling of yourself, and you practice these mental defense mechanisms to where you don't feel like things are hopeless. You're not looking for a savior. It's harder for you to be gaslit when you have self-awareness. It's scientifically proven that when a person has mastered self-awareness, it is impossible to gaslight them. But we talk about the problem of light and never the solution. So, my sister, I know she about to hit me with another 5 minutes. I have so much more to go. But we about to get into these high-level conversations so we can flush it all out. Coming to the stage, I have somebody who has a lot of knowledge in this area. She has really helped shaping, right, the cognitive defense that we need right now, especially as the world becomes more technological and it's advancing faster than minds can keep up with. She's worked in the AI field for over a decade, traveling all around the world. Sometimes paying her like $100,000 to speak, so I'm glad she did this for free. She worked at Microsoft, she be at Google, all across the planet consulting billionaires and people behind the scenes, and I had her on my show. And when I put her on the show, it was a viral sensation and people tapped into her because she could speak the language of the people by breaking down concepts that are typically hard to understand and pulling from information that the average person would never get. So they can't put up that mental firewall because they don't even know to look for the security threat in the first place. Don't know that the language needs to be simplified so that the culture understands it. How many of y'all seen that episode that I did with X? As she's coming out here, I would love for you all to give her a standing ovation, right? So that she really feels welcome in this space, right? Especially when it comes to taking us into the future and giving us the knowledge needed to proceed and win. Y'all give it up for Tech with X. So we were just talking about, complexity and consciousness, right? And the cognitive warfare, security, and defenses that we need during this time, both locally, nationally, globally, right? So that people become cognitive of it in their daily life. What are some of the most pressing things that are on your mind that you wish the average person knew?
Oh man, let me run down my list in my head. I would say first, the conversation around AGI. Have y'all heard that term? Where they're like, AGI is coming in 5 years or 10 years. Yeah. And you're like, what even is that? Well, AGI is artificial general intelligence. It's the idea that one day we will create machines that surpass us in intelligence, but may or may not have the same level of consciousness, which becomes very dangerous. And right now we're in an arms race to who is going to be the person that creates AGI, who's going to get their name in the history books as the person that creates AGI. And that creation process is being shaped in such that they are changing the definitions of what it means to be generally intelligent. So like there was an old school philosophers thought that in order for a machine to be considered as intelligent as humans, it had to be able to process like humans, right? Where humans have 1 cubic millimeter of your brain has thousands and thousands and thousands of terabytes of data. And so they're like, yo, if you want to have an AI that's as intelligent as humans, it's got to be able to have that level of complex processing where it can take in multiple signals, audio, visual, subtle things, and learn from it. Well, they just changed that definition. A company you may or may not have heard of called OpenAI was like, no, AGI is when an algorithm can do the task that a human can do in a job. But does that mean it's intelligent? Or does that mean it's highly functional? And so in that, there's a whole conversation that we're missing in AGI where we're so focused on these machines becoming human-like, we're forgetting about how our human nature is becoming more machine-like. And we're entering into an age of artificial human intelligence, where the things that we think, do, interact with, and how we move are shaped by the algorithms designed by companies solely for the purpose of extracting profit from you, knowing you better than you know yourself so they can serve things to you to make money off of you. Give you an example of this on a very, very micro scale. You have the challenges that we're facing with literacy, particularly in our communities. Well, that goes down to the medium through which we are consuming information. There are tons of research studies that show that when you read on a screen versus a book, it trains your mind to jump around. So you're like, oh, that's why I don't be reading the thing when it's on my phone, right? It trains your brain to jump around, to skip around, to find these parts of the topic that are interesting, but not to really actually hold the substance of it. And so that actually translates to offline reading. So now we're engaging these machines with the intention of simplifying it. I don't have to carry the books. I don't have to have all this stuff. And you're trying to engage with it. In reality, it's inducing ADHD-like attention inside of you in every other domain and area of your life. Now, on a more serious level, when we're talking about algorithmic programming, you have the book Careless People. How many of y'all have heard of that? It's a book written by a Facebook whistleblower. She was the first head of international policy at Facebook. And so she wrote this crazy memoir with a lot of details about how the inner workings of Meta happened. And one of the things that she brought up was the genocide that happened in Myanmar. Myanmar is a country of 60 million people. And with these people coming online, these tech companies call them new internet users. So that means your mom and pops in the rural South who are just now getting DSL. That means all of Africa. That means all of Latin America, right? They're considered new internet users. And all these tech companies went in and they brokered these deals with the telecom companies. And they said, hey, bro, give them unlimited data access to our app. And we'll put the infrastructure in here to support it. But then charge them for internet access to everything else. So what that looks like in countries like Myanmar or Nigeria, where 1 gigabyte of internet is half the cost of the national average salary per month. But Meta is included for free, unlimited data, right? When you go outside, that means Facebook is your internet. You're not switching between other platforms. And you see other players entering into this space. WhatsApp, WeChat, Line, now ByteDance with TikTok is going around to these different countries trying to make it, hey, we'll give you this app for free, like they throw in that Netflix subscription with your T-Mobile phone, right? And what ended up happening in Myanmar, though, because that algorithm was synonymous with the internet, people were able to abuse it and to create narratives about an ethnic minority population in there. And one day it resulted in a story that we've seen incite violence inside of the United States, where they accused someone from that ethnic minority of raping someone from the majority. It was a false story, sound like someone from the South, right? Yeah. And so they went and raised hell and they killed 10,000 people in one day. Oh. Now imagine 10,000 different individuals to be killed. That was not done by 5 people who were some fringe radical group. That was done by people who were conditioned over and over and over again with every click, with every like, with every time they opened that app, with everything they did and did not engage with teaching a system exactly what content would emotionally move them, to be moved to a position where a bad actor came into that algorithm and incited a genocide. In America, we know that as Cambridge Analytica, which changed the way that we chose to vote and show up in the world. So in a world where they're trying to have us have conversations about these machines becoming more human-like and, oh, it's reasoning and it's thinking, which are really not what it's doing, how are we becoming more machine-like? How are we becoming more like the algorithms where our decisions are becoming dependent on these systems? There's a study that just came out, and I'll pause here, that showed that overuse of large language models reduces your critical thinking skills. That means if you spend too much time in ChatGPT, you will literally lose your ability to critically think because the brain is a muscle. So if you're not using it, it causes atrophy. It's like if you lay down and then you try to hop up out of bed one day, you ain't going very far, right? And so we have to really think about this cognitive security and the defenses that we need to put in place to protect ourselves from these algorithms, not just build algorithms that are more like us, but what does us mean in a world of algorithms? And how are we defining that collectively?
Give a round of applause for that. I think most people would agree that they wouldn't give their child cocaine. Because it's very addictive to a child, messes up your brain, right? But you would give them an iPad. And an iPad is just as addictive, right? You give them Netflix, story time. It's just as addictive because they're literally creating the program to make it addictive, right? You give them all these other candies and foods because we will classify one thing as bad, right? And then there's a whole slew of other things that do the same thing, but it doesn't have the same connotation attached to it. So we replace one drug with the other that we say, okay, well, this is okay because I don't have any moral filters on it, right? And so the issue right now with I just seen there was a title on Netflix called Bad Influence. I didn't watch it, but I could imagine what it's about, right? When these kids are watching these programs, right, they're being slowly programmed and you don't know whose influence is in your house, right? And so you may not know your child because you didn't spend those 30 watch hours with them, right, that they had when they was watching this iPad. You don't know what commercial may have popped up, right? You don't know what friend was in the chat. So not only that, you know, children, of course, they don't have the same mental defense systems as a grown adult, but that holds to grown adults as well. We're utilizing these technologies as if with the assumption that they're safe. We're not going online and saying, okay, well, I gotta watch out what I look at, right? You're assuming that the information environment that you're consuming this content, and when you're consuming content, you're not thinking, it's thinking for you. You're just absorbing. So again, when we start talking about being machine, like I seen where they say that I think it's University of San Diego, said that the AI passed the so-called Turing Test. Now, I definitely want to get your thoughts on it. But just the idea of it in the first place, right, is that what does it mean to be human, right? That it can be branded, it can be marketed, you're human-like. And then human beings forgot to actually remember the being part, right? There's an essence to us, there's a soul, there's a spiritual nature to us that we have, that we don't even practice utilizing. Right? That your body feels before your mind knows. But we're not training people to be instinctual whatsoever. So again, that atrophy sets in. When I go on social media, I make sure that I follow no trends. Right? I didn't do the routine video. I didn't do the gimmick. I didn't turn myself into a cartoon character with the, what's the thing they got? The action figures. Yeah. Because I know what ended up happening is that I start becoming reliant on the algorithm's creativity instead of my own. And when the algorithm rewards me, then it makes me want to consistently produce that behavior. So I make sure I don't follow the trends. You have to set your own personal trends within yourself and be cognitive of the influence around you. Because when a new tool comes out, you don't know how to think of how to use it. And a human being should have his own ideas, his own philosophies, his own views and perceptions of things. Because you should spend enough time alone thinking about it. In silence to where you can hear yourself, or in nature to where you can hear God. It's the reason that our ancestors, they all built, all of the ancestors, the melanated ones especially, built pyramids in alignment with the cosmos. They were living in alignment with the cosmos. What are we living in alignment with? Our alarm clocks, our favorite shows. What are we living in alignment with? Nothing. We're out of alignment, we're out of harmony, and we're asking ourselves, why are we sick? Because we don't know today is a pink moon, and we don't understand that it can have an effect on our cerebral spine fluid. We don't know that ancient civilizations would fast during certain times because they understood the cosmic connection between the lunar and the solar bodies and how it would affect us. But we're completely disconnected and out of harmony with time. And that produces chaos. So again, in lieu of that alignment, you're more susceptible to manipulation because ancient human beings felt that connection and you want that connection, but you don't have it. So anything that makes you feel like it, even if it's for a moment that stimulates you, you'll go for it. So our short-term attention, man, I was just doing this podcast, but then I'm on Netflix, but Netflix wasn't enough, so down on my phone. Phone wasn't enough, so now I'm texting somebody. This text conversation is boring. Now I'm back on Twitter. Twitter ain't talking about shit. Now I'm back over here.
And then now I'm on ADHD medicine because the doctor said I can't focus.
Right. The whole time, we started to act like that too. But we started to act like boredom, right, was the problem. But the problem was that we don't like peace.
So a few things. First, there's a book everyone here should read, especially if you have children. It's called Stolen Focus. And it goes into 250 different research studies, but it's in a narrative format. Don't stick it in ChatGPT and ask you because it might take out the answers you need, right? But this book talks about the human brain was never designed for this much stimulation. It was never designed to take in this much input at once. So imagine if you're flooring your car all day long, how that engine is going to run. It's not going to work. So there are intentional periods of slowness you have to introduce. She talks about how simple digital detoxes over a short amount of times don't repair the damage that's done to the brain, and gives some clear strategies on what you can do that can help. But to give you all a little bit more color, because you started bringing up parenting and children, and I don't have children of my own yet, but I have 10 nieces and nephews, and I'm very, very protective of them. I don't think y'all realize how sick this science is. How many of y'all have watched or ever seen an episode of Cocomelon? Okay, so you can go on the internet and you can look up the makers of Cocomelon talking about how they use data science to make the show addictive to children. So what they do is they have babies that they'll bring in when they're doing the production process, and they'll sit them down and have them watch. At any moment, they have algorithms watching their attention. Make sure that, it's a baby. It's going to be like, it's going to bother his head and stuff. But as it's doing that, they make sure that it's paying attention. And any part that isn't paying attention, they edit and make it addictive. It's a reason why your kids love Cocomelon, and it has nothing to do with how much it's helping them develop. It's actually bad for them because the saturation of colors is bad for them. The constant context switching blots their development of their critical thinking skills and the slowness of their brain, and you're developing brains with ADHD. And for them, they don't care. They would sell your firstborn child for an increase in ad spend. Because these are advertising companies building these algorithms. These are not people who care about your children becoming good citizens. They are for the sole purpose of gaining profit and extracting profit off of you. But you as an end consumer don't know that. You just slap it on and think, geez, I got a break for my kid for a minute. And I think the thing for us is we have to ask, why do we want breaks from our children? Right. Because that's the root of the problem, right? To even go into... Trust me.
Y'all know y'all doing them breaks.
Look, I got twin nephews that are 7 years old, and they're like this tall on me, right? So trust me, I know they can be a lot, but not so much that I want to shove Coke in their nose. So why would I shove Coke in their eyeballs? That is designed to be that. Intentionally, right? And so we get back to this notion of what it means to be human. And I think what we're seeing on a larger level with a lot of these systems is a symptom of a spiritual sickness, where there is a deep disdain or disdain and resistance to knowing self, because the self is scary, because the self that you project can't have errors or you're going to get canceled. That Vic says it all the time, I'm an imperfect vessel. It's really hard for a lot of people to be known as an imperfect vessel because of the way that we judge each other for that. And so now we're looking for machines to perfect what's already perfect within inside of us, right? So we're looking for these machines and assigning them qualities of humanity that don't exist within them. Like, I'm going to say this again, large language models do not understand language. You can go look up a research paper called ChatGPT is bullshit. Literally published is cited like 300 times. So that means it's academically valid because a lot of people cited it, right? A lot of people quoted it. So that means it must be right. But it literally talks about on a technical level how these systems only understand these things as math. So how can we call it reasoning? How do we have a reasoning model when it's literally just a math calculation? When we as humans have things that we can reason about that we can't explain, for example, I know when someone's looking at me because I always look over and make eye contact. What's the reasoning behind that? What part of my body knows that someone across the room or across the freeway is looking? And I know all y'all had that experience where you was like, what? I feel someone looking at me. What part of your sensor is that? And what part of ChatGPT, reasoning or not, is able to sense that? None. It's a phallus to get you out of your own power within yourself. So this research paper... So there's that research paper out of UC San Diego, and this is where I really love to go in on people and their scientific methods. So there's two ways of publishing a research paper. You either publish it preprint, which means I put it on a website called Archive, or I just publish it on my website, and nobody has reviewed the science of it. And then there are actually peer-reviewed papers, which then go through like other scientists looking and are like, this methodology is bad. So a lot of what you're seeing in AI right now is people are taking those preprint papers and putting them on those sites like Artificial Intelligence News India, right? And then it'll be like, researchers just proved this, and it's like, that's not what the paper says. So let me actually tell you what that paper said. So what they did, the Turing test is this idea of like, you know, Alan Turing was a LGBTQ dude who cracked the codes during World War II, and the reason we're not all wearing swastikas yet is because of his computational
Last
method.
week.
That's what y'all got to shade.
Shift it a little bit.
It's crazy, scary, spooky, hilarious out here. But essentially, that research paper that came out said that they had got ChatGPT to pass the Turing test, which is like a big, big feat. That's an extraordinary claim. You require extraordinary evidence for extraordinary claims. If you got something that is mimicking human intelligence, the truth is it was about 4 messages and it was like 4 screenshots and like 40 messages in total. And they had to give it a personality first, because you know you can give ChatGPT personalities. We talked about this in the Chat and High framework. So they gave it some personality, like you're a quiet, introverted Gen Z something. It was like, I swear to God, that's the personality they gave it. And in 40 messages, they declared, it passed the Turing test. And then all of a sudden, one influencer picked it up and said, AI just passed the Turing test. And the next thing I know, I watch all of these little AI pages say AI passed the Turing test. 40 messages are not enough to demonstrate that. And when you took that personality out, right, it didn't even pass the Turing test more than ELIZA, which was written in 1957, the original code to try to pass the Turing test. So it actually performed worse than systems that were almost 80 years old, right? And so again, when we talk about our understanding of the world around us and how we are being programmed, where are you getting your news from? Are you taking somebody's AI generated summary as fact? Because if so, then you're saying I volunteer to be programmed. You Katniss Evergreening this, right? Versus you having the ability to still check the source material, understand what's in the source material versus the synthesized version that is being spread in these algorithms. And again, on every one of these social media platforms, the algorithm's goal is to increase what they call stickiness, which is we want you spending more time and more attention in our app. And everything inside of that is designed for that. Why? Because then they can sell advertisements on their platform for a higher amount. On YouTube, it's called average watch time. How much is the average amount of time that a user is watching the segment? Or when you log in on YouTube, what's the average amount of time you watch content on our platform in your session? YouTube was like 32 minutes. Well, the average TikTok user watches about 48 minutes of TikTok a day in a session. And so the higher up those are, the higher you can sell ads for. So again, this has nothing to do with people being like, yo, I'm trying to screw your head up. It's people being careless because they have nothing to care about other than money. And so we have to bring ourselves back into a valued and principled approach to the way that we are deploying technology, unless we continue to be shaped by the technologies that were created to extract maximum amounts of profit off of us at our expense of our literal biological health, our neurological health, our mental, social, and community health can all go to hell if they can get that next stock ticker up outside of this crash. So I'll close it.
Give it up, man. What are you really running from? That war that you think you fighting ain't the real war. There are many wars that we go in different dimensions within self. The real wars are the inner world. It's the self wars. Society has been programming us, shaping our very perceptions of reality itself. One that we did not choose, but one we must take over. There's no more waiting. Now is the time, because it's now or never. Open up your mind's eye to see reality the way that it is, not the way that you've been sold. Understand that you are one of the ones that have been chosen if you just choose yourself. Become your own solutions to every problem and every complaint, every excuse and every blockade that's been in your way. Vision gives one direction. When you're blind, you can never give yourself direction. So you fall. Instead of falling, stand up. Utilize the self-giving and governing power that you have within yourself to become a high-level observer. Not controlled by what you see, but one that controls what they see. That defines the meaning in their reality through every synchronicity that they come across. A divinely guided man or woman. High level forever. I want us to take a second and pause and reflect on this real quick. And I want you to think about it specifically in cultural context, number one, right? Of these information environments, right? Of how the most susceptible populations become manipulated through their music, their media, right? Through digital programming, where it can sway you politically to go one way or the other, right? And just take a second to think about how you may have been affected, right, by this cognitive warfare, if you will. Because every time I hear an example about something that is about, capitalism, or it's about a country, or it's about a corporation, I always think about the culture. Like, damn, we've been going through this so many times, right? If you look at COINTELPRO, the idea was that he would take pamphlets and he would spread them within organizations that would be misinformation, right? And it would create beefs inside the organizations, internal conflict. Today, you go on social media, you see Black Americans and Africans going at it back and forth. Today, there's an issue about our identities in every aspect that we can possibly think about. As soon as I go on Twitter, I see something I don't like. Right? And then I stop myself every moment from engaging with that because I know it's just rage bait. Right? They said something outrageous, something crazy, disrespectful, polarizing, triggering. Right? And they just utilize AI to give me something disrespectful, polarizing, triggering. Right? And they know who is it going to affect. So now you in the comments, right, trying to make somebody not be racist. I don't know why you think your comment that powerful. And that little piece of history you give them, this gonna be it. I'm gonna mess them up with this. I ain't know we invented this, though. Yeah, ain't never worked. Ain't never worked in life because people don't actually care about the truth. If you present the truth, they won't argue with you about the fact whatsoever. And then we go into, like, we talked about memory and we talk about history, right? And what people believe. It is like if I ask you all about what was the golden age? Anybody know what was the golden age? Or what was the age of enlightenment? Somebody get
1700.
17, you got 16.
BC.
Where at though? What we talk about?
Europe.
Europe. Anybody else? Any other takers? Going once or twice, you got year for the Enlightenment age.
Like 4000 BC.
Or what about Cordoba? What about the city of light in Cordoba, where they had like 20,000 lights in the street, and it was a Moorish city? 700 years before, Paris had lights, before Europeans went through that age of enlightenment. What about ancient Samaria? That would have been the first golden age, using cuneiform and writing systems. What about the Mississippian mounds and the Mayans that had advanced architecture, right? What about ancient Mali that had systems that was able to build vast economies to produce the wealthiest man in history? There's an idea called decentrism that I think about a lot, or philosophy rather, where if you prompt this into your chat GPTs and things of that nature, ask it to give you a non-biased, non-colonized, non-white supremacist, non-victory narrative version of history. Then you see what you get. So yeah, we gonna say Europe, but we just forget about the Moors? You don't get algebra because that's an Arabic name. You don't get tariffs, that's an Arabic word. You don't get mathematics and science and astronomy and astrolabes. That was Islam. But of course, if you're a Christian, then you go view history through a Christian lens. So we filter things based on our identity. But what about just the truth? So now we don't even have our own history in our heads. So we can't pull any pride or confidence from a civilization when we build systems, because our core memories is just when we was under somebody else's system, even though they took from ours to build theirs. Right. You didn't get bathhouses in ancient Europe and smell goods and scents until the Moors came and was like, bro, y'all got to take baths every day. They're like, we want to trade with y'all, but let's trade soap first. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's put some oils in here. Matter of fact, you ain't got to buy this. Here, just take all of it. You feel me? I'm going to give you a regimen. Just watch every day here, the legs too, everything. Then we'll come back and we're going to start this trade. But again, we'll go to school for African American studies. We would live through 1,000 Black History Months, and we will never get history. So without the truth of the past, how can you create your own truth of the future? So if you only think it from a trauma base, again, your core memory, your consciousness, the complexity and how they develop culture and societies, it's not viewed based on the truth. Most of history is myth. If you go into Grok and you ask it what was the first civilization of the Golden Age, it's most likely going to say Greek myths. Talking about Hercules. Didn't exist. Literally myths, just storytelling throughout time. And you think that's more powerful than your actual history. Think about how powerful storytelling is and why it's important that the most dominant thing we have power over to control is our media. Everybody here has a social media platform. But if we weren't taught this in school, then we have no intention on how we use things or how it's used against us. I'll be mic dropping, y'all. I can't drop the mic for real.
Nah, man, I'm guilty of arguing with people in the comments. Y'all seen that on my video, so I gotta stop letting the algorithm program be in that way.
Sometimes you gotta flex it a little bit. Just, you feel me? Because I ain't gonna lie, my tweets be going viral for the wrong reasons. It's always the tweets about hip hop. I said something about Drake, it went crazy. He said something about AI, and he got not one like.
I liked it, bro. I liked it. Nah, so I think in this age, all of the information that you get is going to be filtered through some type of algorithmic system. Like, you probably don't notice, but when you upload one single video to YouTube, there's like 40 algorithms that process it, right? To even allow your content to be seen or heard, the decision of whether or not you can make money from it is a series of algorithms that are daisy-chained together by a bunch of different developers who may or may not still be maintaining that algorithm to make that decision. Because the way that this tech industry is let's build, go, build, go, build, go, build, go, not build and maintain. Is to launch and land, not to sustain. That's how they reward the metrics of everything that they do. When I was at Google, it was that way. When I was at Microsoft, it was that way. And so the maintenance of what happens after something has landed, like a highly addictive algorithm that led an entire country to commit a genocide, or swayed the opinions of voters in the most free nation in the world, like we saw with Cambridge Analytica. We have to start thinking about what those offline defense systems look like. And those offline defense systems, that cognitive security is one around personal choice and how you choose to engage with these systems. The second is around collective boundaries on these systems. The first car didn't have a wheelchair ramp and it didn't have a seatbelt, but they do now. And it took time for those systems and those processes to be built. Unfortunately, we don't have that time when it comes to AI. These systems are already deployed and in use in every area of our life. Like, even just think about the act of becoming a doctor. You have to go to school for like 12 years. And then you have to pass a bunch of tests and a bunch of in-person examinations before you can touch a human. But I could build an AI in my garage tonight to determine if you're sick or not and turn it on you without any testing. And that's happening all over the country, these diagnostic algorithms. You might say, well, the report said he was 99% better than the doctor. In what environment? People say Gen Z is sensitive. You haven't met artificial intelligence. It's the most sensitive, brittle technology we've ever created, where small shifts in the operating environment or in the data completely break it. And I'll give you an example. When I was at Google, there was a dermatology app that they launched where you could take a picture of a skin condition and it's supposed to tell you what it is. And we did all the internal, oh yeah, it's like 89% better than the dermatologist. Let's launch it everywhere. And as soon as it got turned in a real hospital, it broke for a number of reasons. First reason it broke, because the change in lighting conditions. All of the training data was well-lit skin under perfect light, where you could actually see it. In a hospital, you might not get that lighting. And that subtle shift completely broke its ability to diagnose, right? And then you go into the seasonal variations of people. I look like a sugar cookie now. Catch me outside in the summer, I look like a snickerdoodle cookie. My skin look different. So the app was classifying basic sunburns as skin cancer and scaring the crap out of people because nobody accounted for seasonal variation. And then you have the difference in cameras. So all the training data was taken with high quality DSLR data. And then someone busts out an Android phone with a smudge on the back, it's going to break the app. Right? Now, that was a lesson learned because it was a research project. But what terrifies me is when the current, Dr. Oz, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, comes out and says, well, we're going to replace Medicaid with AI avatars to diagnose you. Because what might take a doctor $100 an hour would take an AI $2 an hour. So we should just stick that on for y'all. And it's your American duty to help your country save money by accepting this. Even though research studies have shown that any medical advice given from a large language model tends to, particularly for the Black community, bring up really old debunked racist theories about health that don't work. And you can Google this stuff, ChatGPT, racist in medicine, and it'll pull it all up. So you're telling me you're going to take a ChatGPT or a Grok or one of these large language models that's going to make stuff up because you can't get rid of hallucinations in them. It's a byproduct of how they work. That's built on data that says that our head size determines our intelligence. And you're going to make that the default way that the poorest, most vulnerable people get health care. And you're telling me we ain't raised hell about a law to say no to that yet? And that's because we're being programmed by the algorithms about what to be outraged about. All of this has been discussed publicly, but we worried about Drake and Kendrick.
You had sound effects the whole time.
But real talk though, and I can go on and on with the examples, and AI is so brittle. So another example, I think we talked about this before, but in the DMV, right? So DC, Maryland, Virginia, they turned on this algorithm to detect fraud and SNAP benefits, meaning we all want what everyone wants. Don't sell your food stamps. It's not the hustle. There's someone who's on a waiting list that needs them, right? But this algorithm that they built, I think they built it somewhere in the Midwest, like Chicago. And so they went and they did all the stuff to make it work in that environment. They got diverse opinions about how often do you shop, from the richest to the poorest people. And their consensus was that if you go to the grocery store more than 3 times a week, then it's probably fraud. Well, you go to the DMV, which is what they call a food desert. And a food desert means ain't no damn grocery store nowhere nearby, so I'm going to go to this liquor store. Well, I grew up with 8 kids in a 2-bedroom house. We was at the grocery store 3 times in an hour sometimes, because my mama would just give us the card to go back. It's just a different reality of how we interact. But they took that algorithm built for one environment and tried to do what they call generalization, where they tried to scale it to this other environment and it didn't work. So it's flagging all this activity as fraud. And then they have this whole well thought out process. Well, someone gets flagged for fraud and it's not actually fraud. They can just submit all the copies of their receipts with items and just prove to us it's not. Except all of those vendors, because they're in the hood, had cashier machines that didn't produce itemized receipts. So they permanently lost their ability to receive EBT benefits as food desert providers. And that thing is still turned on right now. They got algorithms deciding in 14 states in the US, they take a report, a phone call or something, and they use some type of AI to determine if your kid needs to be taken away from you. And yes, humans are imperfect, but systems built by careless humans are dangerous. And so the biggest piece of cognitive security is putting security around these systems, these guardrails, policies. And everyone's like, oh, policy's super hard. Last year in California, we passed 17 AI laws from August to September. I helped co-author a bunch of those laws. We made it illegal for somebody to take a picture of your child off of Instagram and undress them, because that's a whole phenomenon going around in high schools. It's called undressing websites. So they grab a photo of your child that they post on social media, undress them, and pass it around in group chats. It is sweeping the world by storm. Every country is calling this an endemic. Then you have the perverts who are doing that, the child therapists doing that with their patients and arguing, well, it's not real because it's AI, so it's not really a crime. So we made it really a crime in California. Yeah.
And it needs to be one globally. I think a huge takeaway from all of this is that, as you all hear, we're going into a whole new world, right? Where there are threats that we typically just don't think about at all, right? We're so immersed in old ideas, right? In old world problems, right? That we're not thinking about the world that we're building, and we're taking a lot of this stuff just for granted completely. The next system builders need to be here as well, right? Because it's not as if that this thing is just made by magical aliens and we don't have the ability to create them ourselves. The idea of this is parallel systems. I give it about 2 years that we have, economically and technologically. There's a fight for the future, right? And the hardest thing in the world to do right now is focus. Try to focus on one thing for an extended period of time. It's damn near impossible. Over the last 10 years, how many core memories of catastrophic events have we went through? Right? There's so many, and think about how that's consistently reshaping the world. Every time there is a global event that happens, that reshapes the world because it adds, right, something into the complexity of the consciousness of how the world loops those thoughts, right, and how it changes our behavior. So what happens is that when something negative happens to a country, to a place, right? And this is the thing about humans are the most vulnerable, because sometimes the technology can be good, but it's the human behind the technology that you end up hacking, right? And so there was a study that was done where they was trying to test the security system, right, for this company. And basically they was trying to figure out, how do we get into this environment to where we can degrade the system? So the guy couldn't find any vulnerabilities. So instead he studied the environment, right? He found that there was always a lot of rabbits around, right? And because the people inside, the humans inside would drive past, they would see the rabbits. So he knew that that was in an information environment. So what he would do is he would then start bringing rabbits and sending them up to the perimeter. So it would start the alarm system. It would trigger it consistently over and over and over. The alarm system never got degraded, but the humans stopped taking it as serious. So they started to utilize this type of warfare to figure out, how do we hack the humans and how are they vulnerable with the technology? So now you become seen just like a machine is, right? Because we're so interconnected to these things that they will study the habits of the human being, his information environment, and then think, right, how this connection that you have to the technology can be exploited. And we love our phones. If somebody got here and they realized they had a phone, they wouldn't be here. They would have left. On phones too goddamn important. You know what I'm saying? You'll notice your phone missing for your child. Child run off 20 minutes. Where my son go? Phone out your pocket? You ain't got a notification? You think you lame? So they know that we have this attachment. That's information. So what we're up here doing is seeding you with the ideas, right, of being intentional. So you start to develop these defense systems, but also when I talk to my brother Vic Mensa, we're going to talk about the best defense system is a resilient mind, right? Not allowing yourself to ever become vulnerable, or if you are, recognizing that, right? And knowing where your weaknesses are, because now you have to look at yourself as a technology that can be hacked every single day. So when you stressed out, you realize, oh man, I went and bought that food because they manipulated me at that time. I was weak. You went over old girl house you normally wouldn't have if you was up right now in life. You feel me? But she called you on the right night. You know what I'm saying? They hatched. That's a little more cognitive warfare going on local.
You sure you just didn't want the apple?
Yeah. Hey, she was on the Apple phone and you was scrolling. You feel me? You bit the apple. That was the Adam and Eve story. It's how it happened. It was the story of Apple. He was scrolling. So you gotta be careful about this. But I want to also go into some positives, right? Specifically, you know, about what we can do with this moment in time that we have, right? And also some technology, some practical use cases, right? Different apps that you use, AIs that you use, and things of that nature that the people can write down and take home. And I like to think of it like this, like we're now at this time where you have the ability to build and you have the resources of a Fortune 500 company in certain departments now. Right? I almost used to do everything in my business, from the designing to copywriting to email, right? I design all my products. I want certain font types, typography, because I would study the greats and I'm like, this is what they have, right? Then this is my competition. But it's also my barrier to entry. Now those barriers to entries have disappeared. Now you have a graphic designer in your pocket, right? There's a biasness that comes when you recognize a certain object. Right? Everybody has a certain idea when they look at the phone, and it becomes harder for you to perceive it as something different, right? And utilize it as something different. So a long time ago, I stopped calling it a phone, started calling it a computer, right? Because I understood that these ain't goddamn phones. I can do my business, I can broadcast, right? I can reach a global audience, right? For however my phone bill is a month. So now if you have a brand, you can create brand pictures. You can produce models. You can have your own typography. You can create an archetype for your business, right? You can literally world build right now with your brands, and you have all the tools at your disposal in your phone. And a lot of people are walking around thinking that they need more than they already have, right? Because we haven't changed our idea of what the phone is or the time that we're living in. Because when you don't have knowledge of the time you're living in, you're lost. So AI systems go through knowledge refresh, right? So let's say an AI hasn't been trained on data past, you know, let's make it fun, 1865. You know what I mean? It ain't trained on nothing past 1865. So to that AI, you still a slave. Now you want to update that AI so it start speaking to you correctly. As the AI start calling you boy and stuff, they think that's normal. So you want to give it a knowledge refresh up to 2025. We free. But it's the same thing that could happen if it was from 1990, right? But this is how we are a lot of times, that we haven't refreshed our knowledge on things, so they're not updated and they're not modern. What is the modern way to do business? What is the future way to do business, to do content? How can you utilize these things to teach you what we're talking about, simplified in a way that can also give you steps and frameworks that you can use at home? So there's no longer the excuse, I don't know, I don't have the degree. Well, you do have a machine that was trained on the same information that people who got degrees got as well, right? So now your research should change, because your information environment is not just the phone, it's not just the music, right? You get to combine all of these things together. And I believe the more complex you become, the more conscious you become, right? And the harder it is to subvert you, to manipulate you. This is how I became 19 Keys. I used to study things in my environment and outside of my environment. I used to intentionally make sure that I would get exposure and education to things that I know people in my environment didn't. So it would make me more complex in my thinking. So I would have ideas and I would develop an imagination that was different so I could develop a future that was different than the one that I seen around. So if you telling me that the average person died at 25, I need to go find a statistic that shows me that people live to 125. And I need to embed that. If you say the average person, the average black man only making 44,000, I'm not reading that statistic again. I don't like it. You know what I'm saying? If you tell me that, oh, nowadays the women don't like men, I'm definitely not listening to you no more. That's your reality. You know what I'm saying? That's a biased information environment. Hey, they be like that. They be tripping out here. I don't know how y'all be listening to them people, man. But yeah, you gotta control that. So let's get into some of the positives and the ways that we can utilize technology to build our brands, to build our businesses, build our wealth, to build our own apps and systems.
So I would say first and foremost, we are all being shaped by algorithms. AGI is coming, but artificial human intelligence is already here, where our thoughts and our decision making and our patterns are already based on that. But these systems are based on human data, which means that we have it's not we're being shaped and are powerless. It's just we haven't chosen to take action yet. It only feels chaotic because we haven't stepped in to unclear it for ourselves in our own lives and figure out how we're being shaped to make those things. So I don't want it to seem like Mark Zuckerberg is in your head and you can't get him out, right? These are things that we are intentionally and voluntarily engaging with, that we can voluntarily disengage from and design alternate systems. So I shared this story with you, but when I was 18 back in Oakland, I went, Oscar Grant had just got killed. And so I was one of the people organizing the protest for Oscar Grant, and Brother Bobby Seale became my mentor. He's one of the founders of the Black Panther Party. I sat down with him and said, Bobby, why didn't it work? He gave me a bunch of books to read, and I read them, and I was like, this makes perfect sense. All you were asking for was food and for the cops to stop killing you. There was nothing about get rid of white people like we be talking about now. So why didn't it work? And he said, because we were a program going up against an institution. And he said, we don't have any institutions. He said, programs are based on people. So when you take the people out, the program goes away. Programs can be outweighted. He said, at this time, I think between 60th and 40th Street in Oakland, it was 2,500 black businesses. And so they would go around every day and ask them to donate food. And then they go cook it at the community school for the kids to have free breakfast. That's how they got it. He said, every day we had to ask our community to lose money to take care of our community. Meanwhile, this FBI informant, who was our minister of culture, had been with the FBI since he was 14, even though he came to us when he was 21, and everyone surveilling us had 2-week vacations and had the ability to buy a home. We stood no chance because we didn't have the infrastructure. And so now is the age where we have the opportunity to develop infrastructure, to develop and own the means of production, whether that's the means of production of information, which is the number one thing we've needed, because we're getting information from sources that come without nuance or without context from our communities, and then are designing these algorithms with our communities considered as an afterthought, that we're only 12% of the American population to them. We're not significant contributors to user growth, so they don't care about how their technologies affect us. And they will care when they want to go to Africa, but they ain't there yet. They're all over India and Brazil right now, right? And so we don't have any institutions. And so there are two things that this next tech wave provide us the opportunity to be the shapers of. The first is this AI industry. Over the next, I think it's 15 years, is something like $100 trillion worth of wealth coming into American households because of AI. Whose households are they going into, and why can't it be yours? Talk about it, right? I mean, when the first digital camera came out, there was some little nerdy Asian dude who was like, we don't need a website. Someone one day gonna want to upload their videos, and it's a website you might have heard of called YouTube. What is the YouTube for our generation when a kid can create an end-to-end animated video, full feature film with all the characters voiceovered in a day on their phone? Where are they going to put that? How are we going to consume that? How are we going to monetize that? How are we going to protect that? Are we going to wait until Mark Zuckerberg tells us how that's going to go? Or are we going to decide collectively for ourselves? Right? The second opportunity that we have, and on the AI side, it might seem daunting to a lot of y'all. Like, I can't code no algorithm. I can't build nothing. I don't have compute. I don't have all that stuff. First of all of these tech companies are pimping themselves. They're doing what's called compute for shares. So they're giving, like Microsoft, Amazon, AWS, shares in their company for free computing power. Right? So instead of traditional money investment, they're like, oh no, here, take 10% for your data centers. So now they don't even got to shell out money. So there are ways to get access to the compute. And the second is that DeepSeek taught us that the American way of building this technology is not the most efficient way. When DeepSeek came out,
Like DeepSeek, go ahead.
yeah. Because look, basically,
Don't think we working with CCP in here, man.
no, it was like,
That's the Chinese, yo. Y'all ain't catching the joke.
it's like 5 tech companies that just went behind closed doors and handshook and said, look, the way we build large language models is we have 2 models, a policy model that learns in general and the enforcer model that makes sure it don't say what we want it to say. And they were separate but equal, and you had to scale them both up. And then the Chinese, this dude who wasn't even one of the big, like Apple and Chinese, just ByteDance and Baidu and Alibaba are like the Apple, Amazon out there. It wasn't even that. It was just some random dude who was like a quant trader who came back and bought a bunch of old hardware and was like, nah, bro, it's got to be a faster way to do this. So he cuts it up and he's like, do we need 2 algorithms? How about we find a way to have 1? And he found it and then gave it away to the world for free. So also there's this movement where these tools are being put in our hands where we can do more advanced compute outside of the lies and the narratives they've programmed us around algorithms. You can't touch this. You got to raise an extensive amount of money. None of that's true. So the technologies are there. The second area where we have an opportunity to really shape and dominate is in space. So a lot of people think about space and they think NASA and rockets.
Space.
They think NASA and rockets and JPL and, oh, I have to be a jet propulsionist, and that's a lot of math that I'm not doing. And the reality is that a lot of the technologies that we build in regular industries, in film, media, entertainment, gaming, advertising, have uses in space. But none of us are thinking about that. For example, if you got a bunch of satellites in the sky that do different things, where's the way you visualize that? And I know for a fact the U.S. Space Force don't have a very good one because they have an accelerator that's giving out $550 million of non-dilutive funding for ideas in space. Meaning they will give you $75K to $150K up to $2 million free, cash clear, to explore your idea right now.
How many of y'all got an idea?
And then if they like your idea, meaning that they find it, you
smoke one right now. We're going to figure this out.
Look, if you find an idea that they like, then they turn around and they do the same stuff they do in every other industry. So the generals just happen to be there when you're coming up with your idea, and then they just happen to put out a request for your idea, and you just happen to get a sole source for $60 million. So this accelerator that I've been working with out of LA, it's called I2A, Innovate to Accelerate. Right? It's based out of El Segundo, California, which is the aerospace capital of the world where the Space Force is headquartered. You go through this, and in the last 10 months since the accelerator been up, the 40-something companies that have gone through there have gotten $1.33 billion in government contracts. They've gotten $650 million in outside VC funding and an additional $125 million of commercial contracts. And you might think, well, what if I have an idea, but I don't know how to bring it to life? That's what the accelerator does. They stick you with the Aerospace Corp, which is the Air Force's public-facing arm, public-facing corporation to help you. And you all are looking at me like, I am not going to war. Space is the only place where you fight with satellites, not people. You're not sending no human to go take down another human. Space is observation and reconnaissance and surveillance. So if you have moral conundrums about building autonomous robots and drones, trust it. And I just don't put this on the internet, but I've seen the White House's plans for AI over the next 2 years. They're going to be putting fully autonomous armed vehicles in Homeland Security. They have a 24-month plan for that. And I don't think that's public anywhere. So don't put that, and please don't get me caught up. I'm trying to be out here. But legitimately, so like these
Stop filming. No.
So like these things are legit. Like I've seen the plan in 24 months, and they're gonna do counter fentanyl terrorism crap. You can Google this. Some of this stuff is public. The counterterrorism, fentanyl AI that they're putting out there, and then the Department of Homeland Security wants autonomous weapon vehicles for what? because somebody bought some fake shoes off of Temu, because that's what the Department of Homeland Security enforces is brand copyright. So what do you need fully autonomous up-armored trucks for, right? And so if that's where they're spending their money, how can we shape the next arm of the DoD, where the Space Force is the first branch of the military that's been created since the U.S. Air Force, has no technology, is looking for it, needs technology that parallels the creative industry. Gaming, it needs technology that comes from media and film and entertainment. So the stuff that makes Call of Duty look like you really killing a real person is the same stuff that they need in space. And it's money being given out just for you to tinker and find an idea. And you're not required to work with them beyond that. So that's one cheat sheet I'm going to give you. I want to give you guys 3 apps too, because we can take these before we wrap up. Because I know this is a lot of information, and I know a lot of y'all are like, damn, now what do I do about it, right?
I'm going to give you a cheat code on information. This is what I do a lot. I always take YouTube videos and I transcript them up, right? I take that transcript and I throw it into my favorite AI to give me all of the notes. So you never should feel, at this point in time in life especially, don't ever feel rushed, right? This is not the environment I want you to feel like you need to rememorize everything, right? That is what machines are for, right? That you go back and you review them and you study the things that stand out to you the most and you execute on that, right? Most of the time, you're really trying to see maybe 20% of information. You already have so much going on in life. But you remember that key point everywhere you go that you want to make sure later on you actually execute. Because right now, the information is not the problem. The access is not the problem. The execution is. If they can spit out a business plan, I know my brother, I had a friend of mine who went to AI. As soon as ChatGPT came out, he said, give me a 6-month plan where I can get 100,000 followers. Step by step, he followed every single prompt. And now he got like 300,000 followers. And this was from like 5,000 followers. He was doing thumbnails for me at first. Now I can't hire him. It costs too much. You know what I'm saying? I'm serious. Like Google done hired him, Facebook, Orion, all these different tech companies hired him because he had a story to tell now. Right? But it wasn't about the prompt. It was about his execution. Because most people could go get that same prompt, but would you actually execute on the information that they gave them? Because how many of y'all done went to ChatGPT and it told you something, and it's still just sitting there because you ain't did nothing about it? So it's more so the mindset, the resilience, that executing mind, that when you get information, execute, move on it, right? Make sure that you have that type of mind that is always going from an idea that's pregnant in your mind to an idea that you're giving birth to. That's why I always say procrastination is the abortion clinic of genius. Because when things get hard, people abort. Right? But when you execute, that's procreation. So that means that you go through the hardest thing ever. As a man, I always seek challenge. I'm not seeking comfort. There's parts of the brain that grow when you do the hardest thing. I mean, when you do the thing that you hate the most. It's like going to the gym doing leg day. You know what I mean? If you actually do it, that part of the brain actually grows and it increases your willfulness. So now when there's other things you don't want to do, you still go do it. Mm-hmm. Too many people are operating off their feelings and they don't know how to override that into action. So when you do know how to do that, you can be light years ahead of somebody. They can have the same information, same dream, same vision, but they don't take no action. And then they don't get good at it. So they're not getting feedback from themselves. They don't know how they think, right? I think the greatest opportunity is to customize and study yourself. Study every available metric of data from Myers-Briggs type, not just astrology, Virgos.
Hey, hold on with the Virgo shade on stage now.
There's more people born September 9th and September 19th than any other date in the world. That's how I know it's a lot of Virgos every place I go to. Right? So the idea, though, is I'm going to study my Myers-Briggs. I'm going to do the Big 5 personality test. I'm going to study what, the ancient Mayans say about my birthday. I want to study every metric of data, so I'm so self-aware, you know what I mean, on every level. It's nothing somebody can tell me at all about me. There ain't nothing you can tell me about me. I can tell you about me, right? I can tell you how you perceive me, and I can tell you how you wrong or right. That's it. So if I know myself, I know when I'm lying to myself. I told myself I was going to do something, but stop lying. No, damn well you ain't about to get that done. I know immediately I'm lying. You feel me? But I know when I'm telling the truth. When I can put an idea in my head, that's the difference between successful people. People that have ideas and people that get shit done. right? Ideas are cheap, everybody got, right? But who actually go execute unless you take it to the space people and they give you $75,000 for it? But that requires execution too. So human beings have become too happy, right, with just being stimulated by the idea, stimulated by the potential and not the action.
100%. Sorry, I was going off in my to-do list in my head. I gotta go to my computer now, y'all.
You feel me? All right.
So I'm gonna give you guys a couple tools to help you execute, and then we should talk about how we plan to make sure we're gonna empower everybody in this room with tools moving forward. So I feel like the first tool everyone needs to know about. How many of y'all heard of deep research? Right, that thing you gotta pay $200 a month for on ChatGPT. Well, Stanford has a 100% free version. It's called Storm, STORM. So Google Storm in Stanford, and what that will do will allow you to come in and put a prompt, and you can decide if you want it to be collected or not. And it'll go do research on websites for you the same way that deep research or deep thinking will do. The second tool is a tool from the Paul Allen Institute. Paul Allen is the co-founder of Microsoft. So the Allen Institute puts out a lot of free AI tools for a lot of different things. They like data sets and stuff where they're trying to live forever and like all this. It's a whole site of stuff. But in there is a tool called Scholar QA. So SCHOLARQA. And they built it in conjunction with a tool called Semantic Scholar, which is the largest collection of academic resources out there. So when you go to Scholar QA and you type in your question, it's only going to cite published academic research. Completely free. Now, you can opt in to let your stuff be donated, your prompts be donated, or you can keep them private. Now, I will say with both of these websites, when you save the research off the site in like the PDF or whatever it lets you take you, it messes up the citation. So you're going to want to make sure you take the citation directly in the web browser that's given. And for those of you who struggle with image generation or you ain't trying to learn the mid-journey prompts and all that stuff, there's a website called deepai.org. And DeepAI has an image generator on the website that lets you pick from up to 100 styles. So if you saw me with the cat in the hat thing with the little robotic cat in the hat, that's where I got it from. And I ain't paid for it. And it lets you remove the background in the website, choose what size you want it to generate in, and make it like a little vector. That's how I got it on cat in the hat. So I'm going to give y'all my 3 free for y'all to use 100% free. Now, there are tools out there that you can use to generate across multiple AI systems at once. So maybe you don't want to pay 20 for Perplexity and 20 for ChatGPT and 20 for Claude. You want them all in one? There's a tool that I've been using forever. It's called ThinkBuddy. It is paid, but it's $200 a year, and you get unlimited access to all the large language models in one app. And you can generate them up to 3 of them side by side at a time. So instead of having to go to ChatGPT, then Claude, then Perplexity, then Gemini, you can just in one window ask your prompt and see all the responses side by side. And as you're in the conversation, you can change it. So like, I don't like ChatGPT's answers. Give me Claude instead. And that's $200 a year instead of $20 a month for unlimited access to all of them. So there are all of these tools out there to help y'all access. Now, the hardest part, and what I think Keys and I have been talking about offline, is it's hard to know how to apply these things. You come here, you hear us talk, or you go to a workshop and somebody got slides and you leave and you like, dang, where my food at? Like, you forget what was just taught to you. And so we've been envisioning something where we're going to bring a more interactive method to bring these technologies directly to y'all in an interactive way, in partnership with a lot of these major companies who are producing them for the culture, by the culture, and I'm going to let Keys give more context on that.
You was doing good.
Wait. What was the third image generator?
Deepai.org. So DEEPAI.org is just one word. And then if you want to pay for their image generator, it's a cool little tool. It's free. Always use the old model if you're doing anything copyrighted. So like when I put in cat in the hat in the new model, it was like, nah, bro, it gave me like a cat drinking milk. They blocked it out. So if you use the old model, but if you want to eventually pay for it, you can. It's like $5 a month. But what it gives you is you can change the aspect ratio of how it's generated. So if you're generating for a slide deck versus an Instagram post, it lets you select that. You can select the style. And then once it generates, you can say, expand the image, and it'll zoom out. And then you could download that, or you could say remove the background. It'll remove the background. You could keep that. See what I'm saying? So, and that's all in the free version. If you wanted to do like more than that, it's $5, but that comes completely free.
Give a round of applause for that. The goal with the collaboration is to do labs around the country, essentially, right? Where we immerse you into utilizing the tools, right? And bring tools for you as well. So you leave essentially with the start of new skill sets, right? If I could go around the whole entire country and I have everybody's here and we could teach them how to build the future, it'll shift. It'll shift everything about the culture, right? I appreciate all of you all for showing up because you could have been doing literally anything. But here we are talking about cognitive warfare, cognitive security, and AI, and all these other different concepts that actually matter. But most of the time in life, we are participating in things that don't matter at all. That's like 80% of our time, and then we realize what happened to our lives. I don't want that to be the future of the culture, right? I don't want that to be a future that my future son or daughter grows up in, and then I have to think about what are my responsibilities. Bringing together individuals such as X and other people that we have come together, right, for these workshops, allow us to literally embed ourselves in the future and decide what it becomes, right? When people are paying you for your ideas, you get to shift the conversation, what the technology is used for, who gets to use it, right? Most of the most creative people in the world are in the hood because you end up having to think in a creative manner because you're not given the resources. And the people at the top, they don't know how to think no more because every single aspect of their life, they had to check a box and think how they were told and memorize what they were told and utilize for that capacity. But when you grow up in environments where your perception is different and you bring that into different spaces and you know how to move, then we can decide what is the new anime, right? How do we utilize culture to produce our own propaganda, right? How do we utilize tools to write our own research papers? I was having a conversation with a molecular biologist the other day on the High Lvl Conversation, and her husband was an astrophysicist from NASA. I say, damn, y'all never represented in a culture. As if you don't exist. And when you don't see it, you don't believe it. So therefore, you can't produce it. So the goal is to go bring scientists to you, to bring the technology to you, to have the type of workshops where people are leaving with skill sets, because I've studied the stats. From 1976 to 2010, black men were going to college. After that, it fell off. Why? Because we stopped believing it worked. Why? Because you started taking on more debt and the income actually went down. So now the average income for a black man in America is somewhere around, not average income, but net worth like $1,500 to $1,000. Then we celebrate black women going to college, but now they have $38,000 in debt. And the average has a $0 net worth. So if we don't participate in technology, assets, influence, right, cognitive security, we don't have a future. At least not one that we control. It's one that we complain about because we're under someone else's control. Right? The people that you all know and that you live with, I'm sure y'all could have brought maybe 2 to 3 friends if you wanted to. Now you have the information, but they don't. So now how do you reinforce that in conversation? It becomes damn near impossible because obviously they're not interested in it. So now your information environment is limited. So now that's not where y'all putting your funds and your time. Then when you go on Twitter, none of that information is there. So part of that shift is not only having the events, the storytelling is so important because when there's 68% awareness of something, it starts to shift. But who controls the narrative of that awareness? Right? It's been my job for like the last 10 years to try to get the culture to understand the technologies before they get here. Right? But when you don't care, it don't matter what you tell a person. So now I believe that we're shifting and we're caring about more high level things because we're actually seeing examples of it in the culture. Right? When I have a conversation with my brother Vic, we're going to talk about black excellence versus this idea of black power. Right? Because we focus on excellence a lot, but not power at all. Right? And I know when I talk, they consider it radical only because it's not normal. If everybody talked like this, it'd be normal. If we all had high level conversations, it would produce a different level of confidence and we wouldn't mind talking about them in public, on our music, in our media, in the stories that we tell, in the things that we create, at our family meetings, with our friends. I niggas don't want to hear that shit. At least that's what you got in your mind. Right? So for me, I learned this information not only because I love knowledge, sometimes it's shit boring, but I know it's necessary, right? I know that if I'm not doing it, I don't know who gonna replace me. So the goal with this also is to make replacements, because all these companies, you know, they hiring philosophers. They have chief philosophy officers. They don't know how to think about problems anymore, right? So they have to embed new ways. Otherwise, they get stuck into this cycle, and the culture is stuck into a cycle. We are not thinking about the problem in new ways. We're just operating off the core memories that we have. So when I do events, it's literally the shift, because if I look and I say, we only got 2 years, I mean it, right? Because I understand the problem in depth. She understands the problem in depth. But how do we go to someone and try to explain what they need to do if they don't have a depth of the knowledge that we have? So then we simplify it. So then we take the language and figure out how we can get capital. Then we can get business partners to where we can work with some of the corporations, how we can pass policy. You feel me? Going to different leaders and then influencing them on it. So now we have different narratives that's being spread in the culture. Everything about this is intentional social engineering so that we become the futurists of the world. So it's hard for me to explain something without... One second, I'm almost finished. Then I want to see a roar. You know what I'm talking about? But I always like to explain the philosophy of it, the theory of it, because we do get caught up in practical knowledge a lot, right? And that's addictive. You told me what to do. I need you to tell me what to do again. But I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm trying to help you think. A thinking man, thinking woman is a free man. A thinking people is a free people. Right? So we would rather introduce the knowledge to you, and then you filter that and say, this is how I'm going to think about it. This is what I'm going to do with it. But if I come here and when we leave, you go back to your regular life because you're inundated with all of the information that you currently have, you have to have a pattern break. This is the pattern break. Everything that I do is a pattern break for the culture and for your life so that you can shift in a different direction. I'm a Black American Muslim. She is an LGBT AI wizard. You know what I'm talking about? We represent...
Call me a unicorn. No, I'm
I was careful. You know what I'm talking about? I didn't know where to go with it.
I appreciate the respect.
But all I'm saying is we represent diversity, the word that they hate nowadays. But more importantly, the question becomes is what does unite the culture? What does unite us? What is something bigger than our identity? I think our future is, right? I think our power is, right? And so we both have a consciousness that understand that in a really in-depth level, and we both from the Bay, so you know it hit different.
You know what I mean?
You know what I'm talking about? So I want you all, right, to number one, give another round of applause to yourself. And if there's anybody in here that would like to help us with this message, right? A shift in the strategic imagination of helping with the cognitive security, right, for the culture, right? Of helping us, in the words of Octavia Butler, shape the future. That's what we really doing. You know what I'm talking about? In a very real way. Damn, I sound like brother be socking people. But I mean it. Is there anything else that you would like to give to the people right before you exit the stage? I think that there was a lot of things that you went over that I hope people really grasp to, especially when it comes to the children. Yes. Number one, never forget that. But what is it that you would like to deliver?
2 things, one, a piece of advice and a piece of wisdom. Piece of advice, do not let your children make imaginary friends. There are websites like Character AI that they're going to make imaginary friends that are perfect for them, and they're not socializing with humans. So I just visited my niece up in Seattle, and her dad don't let her do it. And she was like raging because all her friends have imaginary friends now. So my big advice to you, you know, Character AI, all of those little bots that you can make personalities. Do not let your children make an imaginary friend and forget how to connect with real people. The piece of wisdom I want to give is an extension of what Octavia says. So Octavia Butler, favorite author ever, Parable of the Sower. Just love it. Yep. And in it, she has all these verses where she's trying to figure out how to recover. Ironically, the book starts in 2025 after a president is elected who said he was going to make America great again. Octavia Butler died in the 2000s, right? So in this book, she talks about the concept of God as change. And she says that God exists to be shaped. Change is not something that is happening to us. It's something we're supposed to happen to. It's something that we're supposed to actively be shaping and deciding what happens next. But the decision to say, I want a different future, is not the same as the decision to make a different future. And that's what we all have to collectively do. All of this knowledge that you're receiving today needs to be implemented into your lives. Otherwise, it's just words in an empty hall. And so the best thing you can do for me, the best thing you can do for Keys, the best thing you can do for everyone else in this room to your left and right, and those who will sit in this room long after you're gone, is to put into action what you've seen today and to choose to actively shape the future and not be victims of it.
Peace, family. The year of the 9. The year of the 9 is the year of completion, right? You have to know what to get rid of and what is the new thing that you're going into. As we're going and continue into a new cycle, what are we going to feed ourselves? People have all these goals, but what's that frequency to match? If you by yourself in this shift on this planet, right, then you need to come together with a community to where you're no longer alone and you're in the right environment, where we give you the Futurist blueprint, and you're going to be around other people who are dedicating their lives to a higher level. Make sure you come tap in, get your tickets, go to 19keys.com/tour, and I want to see you in the VIP section. You can ask whatever question that you want to, so that we can build community. Peace, family. I'm 19 Keys, and I'll see you for the Save Yourself experience. Let's manifest our own destiny. Ain't nobody gonna save you. You gotta save yourself. You gotta save yourself. Gotta save yourself. Gotta save yourself. Gotta save yourself.
We're going to continue the show. We last had a conversation about AI, technology, all of those sort of things. We're going to keep it on a high frequency level with 19 Keys to bring out this next guest that we have coming up. I'm going to need y'all to do me a favor and put your hands together for 19 Keys. All right?
Well, you can't get black people no breaks. Yeah. Well, I tell you.
So what's going on?
Hope y'all getting some merchandise. So far, we've had very powerful conversations, especially having X in the building, man. She's a whole scientist, philosopher, right, cultural activist, rolled up into one. And I definitely had an idea that I wanted when I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about the core tenets of culture, right? Having somebody that is specifically entertainment, somebody that is a culture, somebody that's in science, to give different breakdowns. The thing about my brother that I'm bringing in today, man, he's a very cosmic individual. Everything that he does is from a range of like futurist thinking, right? Which is completely on par with all the conversations we having today of like, if I don't see it, how can I project that for myself? How can I become an image that when people see me, right, they can see a different possibility, they can see a different idea. And I think it's empowering when you have that sort of intentionality in your storytelling, because then it shifts. Typically, when you see somebody at the height of their career, they try to do everything to stay safe so that they don't rattle anything, so that they don't risk losing what they have. Instead, I see Jaylen Brown consistently embracing who he is, right? From the moment that he came into the NBA, right, to his ability to not only operate at a high level, to be able to get one of the largest contracts in history, to win a ring and become MVP after that, to say no to Nike and drop his own shoe. You understand me? And to get on high-level conversations and create a paradigm shift on how basketball players are seen. When he first came into the NBA, they said the man was too smart. Now, typically, when you don't want somebody to be too smart, it's because you don't want them to influence everybody else to start thinking. But that's the opposite of what I do. But today, I want to have a conversation completely about Futurism and the different labs that he's doing at MIT, right? And the technology that he's been working with. Anybody seen this thing around his neck? Yeah. I was trying to figure out what the hell it is. I was too at one point in time. And I got close enough to ask him, and he said this was frequencies. I said, frequencies? Brother, trick. You know what I'm saying? Then he started to break it down to me, right? That instead of taking CBD, instead you can get the emission of that frequency that can hit the molecule in your body, and it can induce the same state and the same feeling that CBD will give you, right? If you're on a plane and you want to get some deep sleep, then it can induce that same feeling of melatonin, and then as soon as you cut it off, it disappears. Now, this is a powerful, groundbreaking technology, right? As a futurist, I'm always recognizing technology and like, how can we utilize it to be more human, to be more in harmony with the environment, right? Because we don't make a lot of clean technology. We make a lot of technology that has side effects, that has a human cost. So I applaud the fact that not only he's intentional in the way that he influences and the people that he partners with, but almost every single aspect of his brand building, right, and his aesthetic and his partnerships are all about being an example of what the future looks like. So if y'all would pay some respect and show some love to my good brother Jaylen Brown by making all the noise in the world.
Let the words flow. Baby, you was mine, let the world. She got the longevity. I know how to touch it without using my hands. Promise to be for any therapist. If we can run it, we can run it, we can run it, we can run it.
How we feeling today, man? I'm liking that gray.
I'm blessed. I'm blessed.
You know, I always got exclusive colors nobody else got.
Yeah. Happy peak moon.
Yes, sir. Speaking on the moon, we and you had a lot of private conversations, specifically like on cosmic science. And you've endorsed to me on how you grew up being in alignment with those things, right? And as I grew up, right, I found that in my own independent study, right? Just studying how ancient civilizations lived in harmony with nature, right? And the cosmic and lunar effect that it has on our body. Can you tell me a little bit of your research and your interests, particularly, right, in cosmic influences?
I think it's funny in today's time because I openly tweet about the sun and the moon all the time, and people be like, man, Jaylen is weird. You know what I mean? Like he learns about the sun and the moon and da-da-da-da-da. I mean, like, yeah, the sun is a provider of life on our planet.
Yeah.
Yeah, the moon has a gravitational pull. What you thought the sun and moon was like for aesthetics? He's like, this generation, like, I don't know, like, just, you know, there's certain things that I think people should know, I think just go kind of slip under the bridge a little bit.
Yeah, I believe that we just don't live in harmony with nature anymore completely, right? Like, our rhythm now is controlled by a mechanical clock. Right, it's no longer controlled by the moon. And when ancient civilizations were built, it's because they understood, right, that cosmic calendar, right? Like today, you know, you talk about the pink moon and things of that nature. There's so many scientific studies that typically they used to try to act like this is pseudoscience, right? Now they have to give reverence to the fact that, you know, the tides of the ocean has a pull on the cerebral fluid in your brain that can make you think different.
Scientific fact.
Right? And when women talk about the moon and their lunar calendar, because we live in a man's world, we don't think about those cosmic cycles. And then a man is connected through his lunar body, so sometimes you might have high testosterone in the day, and sometimes you have lower. Right? And then, you know, if you're waking up too early like Ashton Hall, you're not really in the cosmic influence. You feel me? So you want to go to sleep with the sun and wake up with the sun.
Absolutely. A perfect example of that, last month was Ramadan. You know, you talk about the lunar-based calendar. In Islam, they follow the lunar-based calendar. It's 12 cycles in a calendar, which means it's 12 lunar cycles in a year.
Yes,
sometimes 13. The 13th one, it comes from, you know, they call it the blue moon. Happens every 2.5 years. But back then, when we measured calendars, how we knew a month went by is that we saw the moon go through its phase in the sky. So that's how you measured a month. So now we follow the Gregorian calendar, which is more man-made, with January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, etc. Who, I think Pope Gregory was his name, who converted it from the Julian calendar. The Julius Caesar, who was a Roman, who was a leader of the Roman Empire, he incorporated July and August for him and his son, Augustus. So we follow a calendar that's not necessarily, you know, in tune with the nature of things. So we wonder why, you know, society is not in tune with the nature of things.
I didn't even know he was that deep. I didn't even know. That's why I wanted to get him to talk that talk one time. No, it's 100% real, man. When you look at certain populations that built in alignment with the pyramids, right? The idea was, how do we live in harmony with land, right? How do we create something that's sustainable? And so that goes directly into the mindset that they have, is that there's a difference between ambition, right? Aspiration versus like, how do I just create more and more and more? In America, nothing is sustainable, right? You have to keep getting more. It's never just about how do you just maintain what you have already. So we focus on generation of income and not regeneration, right? Meaning that same energy is coming back to point sustaining itself. So when men would operate with the land in agriculture, they did that because they understood the land, and when the moon would come in, and when the sun would come in, and when to plant certain crops. Can we get a little deeper into, we talked about it last time, your future is mindset. But I want to understand, when it comes to the way you think about the future, the way you think about your own future, what is something that you see for yourself that other people don't?
For myself or for others?
For yourself and others.
For myself, that's an interesting question, because it's hard to really answer that. You know, I kind of live off the mindset that there was a lot of people that came before me that sacrificed a lot to get to where, you know, where we are in society. So when you talk about the future of somebody who has that same level of commitment, is, you know, it's unsurety. But I will say, to some of the stuff that you've been speaking, and talk about being in harmony and in tune with nature and things like that, that we've heard a bunch of times. But, you know, the reality, you know, because of, you know, human activity, we've created, you know, a footprint that has consequences. Like, next week I'm giving a speech, and we talked about this. I'm giving a speech at MIT on climate change. It would be, you know, a new topic for me to discuss, but it's all connected to everything, you know, through severe weather patterns that we've already seen, from storms, floods, heat waves, etc. We've already seen fires in California, hurricanes in the Caribbean. All that has an effect on the communities, the infrastructure of those communities, our economic systems. You know, all of that's going to have a trickle-down effect, because in reality, because of the human activity has increased our footprint, like, we're going to see new extremes. It's going to be more floods, it's going to be more fires, it's going to be more storms and stuff. It's going to be colder and hotter in places it's not supposed to be. Society is ill prepared, which means the Black and brown community is the most ill prepared. It's going to affect us the most, the people who probably had the least, you know, least input on the environmental degradation that kind of goes on. So that's something that I want people to be more aware of, because as this stuff starts to happen, and you start to see it, and it's going to, like, people know, they know, like, what's coming. But, you know, they're not going to tell us necessarily, or they're not going to, you know, put the systems in place. So, you know, sometimes we got to take it on ourselves to prepare ourselves for what's to come. Like, you know, our earth is changing. The weather is going to change. It's going to get hotter. It's going to be more storms, more floods, the places that we don't think. And it's not just here in the U.S., it's going to be global. So I think as a society, we got to just be prepared for that.
That reminds me of the fact that even when we talk about climate change, we don't talk about it as if it's our conversation that we own, right? We think it's a conversation that comes from like a corporation, when the reality of it is indigenous populations always talked about climate change, that man essentially would ruin the world, right? With his disharmony with technology and his overuse and domination, and that is going to be a time when the earth revenges back. So I think at the core of it, what we truly lost was that spirituality, right? That connection with all things, right? You play basketball, and on a physical level, there's a spiritual energy to that, right? If your mind is not connected to your body in the way that you move and the resilience that you have as you go out there, and the ecosystem of you taking care of yourself, right? Your body fights back. Your immune system breaks down, right? You start overworking yourself, right? and you're not pouring back into yourself, then you can't regenerate energy to go out there and perform at a high level. Now, recently, you talked about how you spent $500,000, you feel me, on your biohacking. Right? I want to get into some of this because I only spent like $500 last year. I think I did all right. No, but what does that routine look like? Because, and I want to get into the happies in a second as far as like frequencies, but like, let's start with how deep it goes in your philosophy, you know what I'm saying, of taking care of yourself.
Yeah, first, taking care of your body is taking care of your mind as well, like alleviating stress, traveling. I mean, when I include that number, you see that number, that includes like vacations, going places to disconnect. Like even being, I was talking about this with actually my mom, like even being, I've been in Boston for 10 years and I've been myself the entire 10. And I'm going to be, if I'm here for another 10, I'm going to be myself the next 10. Like I'm not going to change, conform, or dwindle it down for people to be more digestible. I'm going to just be myself. But with that comes a lot of intense pressure, and it comes with a lot of intense, people feel uncomfortable by the way I'm moving. And I understand that, like through the media, through the fans, through maybe organization, etc. Because I walk as me. That makes things extremely heavy, Mm-hmm. It makes things extremely, hard to carry in times where I gotta be a certain way. Last time we talked, some of you seen some of the clips, I talked about stoicism, and I talked about that mentality that I had to adopt. I had to adopt that to survive here, because I would have been crashed out. Because the way people be playing with you, the way they talk to you, the way they can question your confidence, and any of they assassinate your character, and it's the norm. It's normal. And like, I gotta carry that while performing at a high level and being myself. So when I need to disconnect, when I need to refresh, when I need to recharge, if I gotta fly all the way across the globe or whatever, I want to travel, whatever makes me kind of be able to come back and be able to put the vest back on and do it all over again, that's included in it. You know what I mean? That's included in that mentality. So you talk about that, I think like just having peace of mind is underrated. Like I get like it's war, you know what I mean? It's going to be that. I signed up for that, but you got to take the time to kind of recharge at times as well.
Before you got here, we was talking about that as far as like cognitive security, you understand me, and how the weakest amongst you is the most vulnerable to be manipulated and how that affects the whole, right? So oftentimes, sometimes we think about our culture or we think about people who are less fortunate and we think we can ignore that, but it always have a heavy cost on us, right? When you're the successful one in the family, right? Now you have to take the burden of everybody else. When you're the one that has the highest mentality, everybody is coming to you. And that also degrades the resilience of your own mind, right? So in culture today, taking that time to disconnect from the world is how you connect with yourself, right? And it increases, right, that resilience and that mental adaptability. So when you come back into spaces, you are yourself, right? Because when people hit you, they be like, but you ain't acting like yourself, you angry. You got mood disorders, you got issues and problems that's going on. Yeah, because I'm dealing with stress and it's degrading my ability to be myself, right? Because I'm constantly reacting and responding to things. So I think like, number one, self-care and the way that we talk about it, right? And it's a priority, right? We talk about mental health, it's a buzzword, but we don't really practice it in the day-to-day when we think about our ideas of wealth, right? So when I see somebody like yourself, wealth is longevity. Right? If you can have something that lasts for a long time and pass it on, the wisdom, the knowledge that goes into it, I don't think that most people understand the wealth that you represent. Right? When we look at Kobe, he had that Mamba mentality. I think for this generation, you're representing that same sort of stoicness and mentality, right? So that people can understand, like, all right, what does it take to win? It's not just about the money you get. What is the process that one has to develop? Right? And I think you're representing an archetype for the next generation. So, number one, give another round of applause. You know, my favorite quote is, what you do frequently becomes your frequency, right? And, you know, the Earth has a frequency. Every 26 seconds, it emits a pulse.
I was just talking about this.
Tap in.
Schumann's resonance.
Yeah.
Earth resonates at 7.83 AG. Like, everything has a frequency. You know, we have one, humans vibrate between 4 and 6. Usually, on average, you know, some have higher frequencies than others, unfortunately.
That's just a fact. Scientific fact.
Frequency is how often something occurs. Scientifically, frequency is how often something vibrates. Can anybody tell me what resonance is? Anybody? Your hands?
Man, don't make Boston look bad. GPT.
Say that again. Stand up and say it.
It's like the energy that comes back to you. Like your resonance is like how other people are impacted by your frequency.
Pretty much. It's like it's the rate of vibration that occurs within the object, and that object has the ability to affect other objects. So we all resonate at a certain frequency. Like when you walk into a room, we all know those people. Like when you walk into the room, they make the room better. You know what I mean? Because you have the ability to resonate with others. Some people have the ability to make the room worse. You know, which one are you? You know, it all comes back to music. And it's even music, the base of music is a frequency. It's a combination of frequencies, and it has the ability to make us feel, and has the ability to affect the human body. Why do you think that is? If you go deep enough, you'll go back to there's 9 original tones. They call them the holy tones. Different cultures call them certain things, but there's these things that are these tones are mathematically and electromagnetically aligned with the pattern of the universe, in a sense. So aligning with those frequencies, you know, is what helps you feel and resonate with things, emotions. It has an effect on the human body.
Can I resonate with them? It's powerful when you go into American history, and that's what a lot of people. Anybody ever heard of hoodoo? Hoodoo. Voodoo is a derivative of hoodoo, but hoodoo was a spiritual practice of the slaves, right? So when we look at black church today, black church is a derivative of hoodoo, right? Being Christianized because they couldn't practice their own system. So when they would drum, they would band drumming, right? They would go into the forest and they would do certain dances in a circle and they would chant. And the idea was that they were conjuring certain energy and spirit within each other, right? They would hum and they would share certain messages, right? To raise the hope frequency of people that were there. This became embedded into what culture is today, right? This idea of catching the Holy Ghost or evoking your ancestor, right? These are ideas that come direct from hoodoo. There was intuitive practices that would happen and they understood the unique power of music because a lot of them came from Congo, right? And in the Congo, they was going through their old war and they had knowledge of warfare. And so there's a lot of things that we practice in a culture that we don't realize why it resonates with us, right? Why when we hear certain things, we hear that 808 drum, you feel me? That's supposed to be really for wartime, right? Because you're embedding that into the soldiers to prepare them. So if I'm listening to some gangster music, I'm probably in the gym. Because if I'm doing it at home, I'm probably not going to be peaceful to the people around me. Because I just shifted my energy. So now, right, I got a shorter span of things that I'm willing to tolerate. So I think when we think about frequency, there's a frequency literally in everything. And the goal becomes, it's like, what am I resonating on a daily, right? Your brand is called 714.
741, brother.
What's my?
It's cool.
Edit that out.
But before you change, before you change topics, that's such a beautiful way you explain that was perfect, especially related to music, because ancestrally, culturally, has always been our connection. Sound is. Can anybody explain to me what sound is?
Sets off in the
You went deep already. just to thank you.
I heard somebody say sound is. We have some gifts for the people who are.
Y'all know we got giveaways.
So we got to get her.
We got coffee. We got the happy.
I heard somebody over there say who raised your hand? You said it was.
Yeah, go ahead.
I said vibration and an audible range.
Perfect. Sound is just a vibration of molecules. They vibrate at a certain, speed. If they vibrate fast enough, you will hear them, and those sound waves have wavelengths. You have shorter wavelengths and you have longer wavelengths. Those from, the difference between the short and long is what they call the music is pitch. And sound, the human ear can only detect like, a certain range.
20 hertz.
20 hertz to 2000. But things outside of that range we can't even hear, but sound exists outside of what human ears can detect. But sound also is synonymous with color, who also can tell me what they call people who can see color.
Synesthesia.
Boom. Synesthesia. We've known like famous musicians and like Pharrell or like Kanye has been known to be able to see color. You can see how that can give an incredible advantage. But music, sound has always had the capability of affecting light. Mm-hmm. Inside of us, we got energy. Another scientific fact. It's what makes up a human being. Other cultures have called it other things. Chakras. And it has the rainbow, the spectrum of light. Based upon the wavelengths of sound are correlated to like the effect on light, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think another interesting that correlates with that. So there was this hack that they do in certain environments where they can do. When was the last time y'all heard a mosquito buzz? Right? After the age of 25, you lose the ability to hear the buzzing of mosquitoes because they buzz below the range of human hearing. So what they would do in certain environments when they want to keep kids out of, because the sound is actually annoying and disruptive to the body, they will play this sound. Now the children didn't know why, right? When they get to it, they got a feeling of discomfort. So the adults can't hear it, so they can be in that same range without having that feeling of discomfort. So that's like you playing this invisible sound in your living room. Your kid don't want to come in there and bother you no more.
That's right.
You know what I mean? But this is like tactical sonic warfare that happens. And I think about all of these different things because we don't often think about how our environment is always affecting us. And it is. The music we listen to, the media, right? How many times we do something becomes the frequency of what we're doing. Then it becomes a vibration, the pessimism we hear or the optimism we hear in our ears. Everything is a vibration, right? And if you can have a metric to understand what that is, then you can say, oh, this is why I don't have a lot of money, right? This is why I'm always negative. But we're not typically checking those frequencies.
100%. This whole shit is tuned to the wrong frequency.
Right. So the goal is to shift the frequency, and that's what we do. When you're a powerful energy and you walk in the room, your goal is to make the room resonate with you, not resonate with the room, unless it's already the right frequency, right? So get back into the 741 real quick, right? Given that it is a frequency, what's the intentionality behind that?
So, all right, I got one more question. I ain't gonna keep questioning y'all, but who can? I talked about there's 9 tones. They call them the holy tones that are mathematically, electromagnetically connected to like the pattern of the universe. Like if you can align yourself with these tones, and the more you align yourself with these tones, the less opportunity you have for like disease and things like that. And it's like a natural way that God created to help us heal ourselves. Also scientifically proven. And it's the same concept when they're using sound baths where you do meditation with the bowls and all that stuff. But it's 9 of them. But 741 is one. And they call it the cleansing tone. Like when you're like removing negativity, starting fresh, and bringing in, expressing yourself and bringing in creativity. And that's what I think was needed in the shoe industry. Because, you know, a lot of how the relationships between these brands are kind of like autonomous certain things. you know, the labor practices, where they manufacture from, you know, how they treat our people of influence. Currently, they pull back deals off the table. There's been a lot of stuff that's been happening in the shoe industry, which made me want to start a brand called 741 that kind of like, let's start fresh, let's cleanse, and like, let's start empowering other people to think for themselves and to take matters into their own hands.
If you could give us a word, I know you told me that you was working on some MIT fellowships and you're working on some things there. Can you give us, number one, what's the importance of doing that, specifically like with the culture? And like all these institutions you work with, from Harvard to MIT, like what prompts that you see as important for you at the height of your career right now, making sure that those things are also embedded into your legacy?
Well, let me see how I can answer this. Well, first, you know, my relationship with MIT, I guess, started, you know, early. Like I was 20 or 21 when they made me an MIT fellow. The Media Lab was created by Nicholas Negroponte or something in the 80s, basically to create this space where all these fields exist in one place, where you got space exploration, science, synthetic biology, lifelong kindergarten, all these different, you know, educational practices have to be in the same building, because change doesn't come from one specific entity. It comes from like everybody working together. So they identified me as somebody who was a thought lead or a leader, an innovator in sports. So at an early age, they invited me to the campus to start, you know, doing some cross-disciplinary studies. In the cultivation of that, I developed a curriculum called Bridge, where I take students from, you know, the inner Boston area, Dorchester, Roxbury, etc., for programs like No Books, No Ball, from Boys and Girls. We're looking to do it this summer too, so be on the lookout for some you know, some flyers to be going out to make sure you get your kids signed up. But we did it again. We did it about a year ago, and we had about 100 to 200 students at MIT, exposing them to like scientists, astronauts, you know, leaders, some activists, just a combination of this curriculum that I created in order to like expose kids that are like, you know, basically excluded from success and opportunity, to give them that exposure, because I was one of those kids. Yeah. The way capitalism, society in America is set up is betting on those kids to lose. Everything is set up for those kids to lose. I'm betting on those kids to win. I'm one of those kids. So. I created the Bridge program in order to like redirect the resources to where I felt like they should go the most. Obviously, people make those decisions in local politics and etc. On our behalf without us even knowing, because most of us are not involved in local politics because like it's annoying. But you know, we need to having people in those spaces that are representing us, so we can have those resources that are going to the places they need to go. So that was kind of the formation, you know, how I connected with MIT. Like when you talk about technology and innovation, that goes back way further than MIT. Like, you know, you could talk about, you know, ancient civilizations where I feel like my ancestors are connected to, etc. But as we speak today, you know, MIT is a leader in that space, and I plan on using those resources to help kids that come from my community in order to give them exposure to what's going on in the world. You know, and that's what we do, you know, pretty much every year. We didn't do it last year, but we're going to do it every year going forward. Looking to take it on the road, do it in different places. But it's basically like, you know, most athletes do basketball camps. You know, for a basketball player, you know, they do a basketball camp. You go to this camp or that camp. Like, we do learning camps. Like, I got kids that show up and they be like,
Now that's real, because we were literally just talking about that, right? Like, how do we make that shift? And if it's not individuals like yourself that's in position of power, right? Especially shifting generations early. You know what I mean? Seeding them with that change to where they rooted in it. Because if I had somebody when I was young that was a mentor, right, that helped feed my ideas at a younger age, right, I probably would have made less mistakes than I did. Right now, I'm happy I became who I am, but I just think about so many people who did not have that ability to make it out because they didn't have nobody that was guiding them out. Right? So I think that is powerful when we take that intentionality. Again, we have to be intentional. That's one of the core principles in making the shifts that we want to, because we're living in a time and age where things are shifting us and we're not shifting them. Right? So if we can control, not just control it, but I think about control in the sense that what is our intentionality and our influence? If every single athlete did what Jaylen Brown does, how would the world change? Right? My brother Keaton talked about this a lot, the unintended wealth group, right? Those individuals that come from the same set of circumstances that we all come from, but they come into wealth. But the true wealth is their values and how they spend their time, not just their money, right? How they spend their influence, right? So I always think about the character of the individuals that we prop up, because we celebrate a lot of excellence, but we don't celebrate a lot of progress, right? And the progress is what we're going for. What are the things that we own? What are the cycles that we ending? What's the feedback loop to understand the metrics of when we're changing the diaspora, right? How do we decrease the literacy rates? How can we be celebrating in a culture when our literacy rates are at an all-time low? That means our children don't understand a damn thing. So when we celebrate things that have no meaning, we become a meaningless people.
And that's so intentional. Like right now, we live in a very stupid era. Excuse my language.
No, that was scientific language right there.
Nothing is taken serious. Everything is to be trolled. Everything is to be, like made into a joke. And the only joke is us right now.
Before we leave, because my good sister wrote time in there 20 times. Got you. I appreciate you. But if you would you like to explain the happy for yourself? I know I took a stab at it myself, but why did you get involved with this particular technology?
Absolutely. So, we talked about frequency. Frequency is the how often something occurs. If you follow the language will tell you frequently, frequency, like we said, resonate, resonance. These are scientific terms. But frequency is how often something, occurs. And we measure frequency in Hz, which is hertz. Hertz is 1 cycle per second. A cycle is like a wavelength. You know what I mean? How many wavelengths go by? If you see it like, whatever, like a million, like it's like 400 cycles in one wavelength. That's how we measure. It's like 440 hertz or whatever the case may be, or 400 or 741. Of course, that occurs 741 times in 1 second. So frequencies are in everything. And the more we are tuned to certain frequencies because of the rate at which they vibrate, the more we can have an effects on the human mind, the body, etc. So for this device, the company called Emulate had basically a frequency like MP3 player where they could record frequencies. So basically they recorded a bunch of frequencies and was able to put them into the technology of a device. So now you can connect it to your phone and play a soft frequency around your neck that has an effect on stress, that has an effect on sleep, that has an effect on recovery, and X, Y, and Z. Now, I'm working with this company to develop the science even more, so it's like a full replacement. You know what I mean? Instead of having to take melatonin or taking Adderall, you got ADHD, you got to you can put a device on, you got to put nothing in your body. That's the goal. I mean, we're not there yet. Right now, if you wear the device, it's probably like a 15-20%, additive that can help you to that rate. But the goal is to be able to imagine one day, instead of going to the doctor, you just can put on the device and has no side effects, and you can be healed that way. Obviously, the FDA will kill me before they let that come out.
No, we got you.
But we gonna work on it anyway. We're gonna work on it anyway.
So we about to, first of all, give another round of applause for yourself and Jaylen Brown showing up tonight. You thought that the boss have been bringing records, you know what I'm saying, winning and winning and winning and winning, you feel me? Again, this is my brother, this is my favorite play, you feel me? I am from Oakland, but I can celebrate with y'all, you know what I'm talking about? But as we talking and we talk about the culture, we talk about entertainment, I have another person I want to bring in as well. He had made a post about the difference between Black excellence and Black power, right? And specifically in the terms of how we've eliminated all those metrics, right, that represent our progress. And we've replaced them with trophies, participation trophies in culture, right, in economics, but not owning anything sustainable, not owning any systems, not controlling any institutions, right? We complain about what's being thrown away, but our goal should be replacing everything. You want to?
I agree. But I very much dislike the term Black excellence.
Me too.
Because it's like an undertone of like Black elitism. It like kind of like operated like in this capitalistic way that's not in tune to us, like how we move like them. I don't like that. When I do business, I'm not trying to take advantage of nobody. I'm not trying to scam nobody. I'm not trying to get over on nobody. I think business should be done that way. You know what I mean? I think we should both get something out of it. If not, I won't even do it.
Right.
You know, I just think it should be that level of honorability, but that don't exist in America. That don't exist between human beings. If I could take advantage of you, where I can get 100 and you get 0, then most people are going to take that opportunity. I think that's morally wrong.
Right.
You know what I mean? But that's just not how people perceive business, and people would disagree with that. And I wouldn't.
Well, that's because we turn culture into capitalism, and we turn money into a god, right? And we'll do anything for that money. And we justify all actions by at least you get in the bag, right? Not that you did it where it's morally aligned, not that it's aligned with your spirit or your values or nothing. It's just, but they got the bag though, right? So that's justifying our own self-destruction, as long as it comes with some capital. So now we can't see our progress, right? Because we keep celebrating things that don't represent our progress. And we celebrate people that have nothing in their plans for our progress. And this is why I align with different individuals. I align with what Jaylen's doing. I align with my brother, Vic Mensa, as he has these conversations on his platform, so that they happen more frequently, so that we shift the frequency of the culture, so that people can make money off doing good business. Versus we have an industry that robs us, destroys our culture, while they align with their pockets. But our culture is dealing with the real stories that come from this trauma, right? We really have low literacy rates. We really have high mental health illnesses. We really have high prison rates. So when we consistently reinforce and recondition those things into our hearts and our minds, those are the only memories we have to circulate. And then we treat each other based on that particular narrative, right? So when we focus on what is our progress, collectively, not individually, you realize there's not that many things to celebrate, right? So our shift is to give us more things that celebrate a metric of our progress, saying that we're now the owners, the controllers, and the rulers of our own sovereign mind and our sovereign progress. And my brother Jaylen Brown represents that future. Stomach in, chest out, head up. How you teach a generation that don't know theyself? How do you give them the ability to be able to control the world? Not from an external point, but from an internal point. How do you teach them that the greatest enemy that they have ain't racism, ain't classism, ain't fascism, ain't poverty? No, it's the enemy that exists within. It's the self-war, the thought war that you go on a daily basis. How do you equip them with the tools to be able to win that war? You have to show them who they are so that they can customize their universe. We look at the technology and people talking that's the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast is when you have a beast-like mind and don't have the ability to be able to control your nature. That's when we no longer operate from a soul place of morals and values and principles and vision and vision. But we can name our entertainment every single day because we're distracted with escapism, because it's too hard to deal with the emotions that's required to heal yourself from the trauma. How do you teach them to be able to encompass everything that they want to be, to take thoughts outside of their mind and see it in reality and not be satisfied with mediocrity? You have to give them the militance of discipline. You have to give them the rules of order. You have to show them the possibility in your own actions. You have to be courageous every single day, even if you don't want to do it because you have to. They've destroyed us, made us a desire-based society, always fall into the whims of your emotion without control of your mind. But when you teach, and you elevate, and you lead, and you encompass everything that you are on a daily basis, and you operate with that God mind, then you live above society, and you become one of the rulers and not one of the ruled. That's the highest level. Go in your mind, design the world, execute it. Build with your family, take your wealth, take your power, and quit waiting. Because ain't nobody gonna save you. You gotta save yourself.
All right, let's have a high-level conversation here, man. I'm about to bring in my good brother Vic Mensa, and we about to have one of them culturally powerful, radical conversation, no holds barred, whatever comes to mind, man. I appreciate this good brother as an activist, as somebody who is a philosopher, I believe, of his time, somebody who doesn't mind sharing his words, his stories, his music, the whole deal, right? When I connect with people, it's usually because we on that same path. You feel me? He had shared some words with, some words that I had shared, and I'm like, let's have this conversation in person in front of the people so that we can crystallize it and archive it so that people have that for all time, right? And this is a conversation that I believe that if it becomes normal, this is probably the most powerful thing that we can do in the culture, right? I think that media and storytelling literally is the most powerful tool that we have to change. So anybody who tells a story or challenges the stories that's being told, to me, they are the evolution of the culture. So please stand up for my good brother, Vic Mensa, if you will. So let's jump right into it, man. I know we got you for help, man. You got things to do, people to see. But you've been sharing your stories a lot, right? Some of them are very funny, some of them are enlightening, right? And sometimes you share your journey of mental health, right? And sometimes you challenge the culture, right, to think differently. I want to dive directly into this Black excellence versus Black power conversation, right? And number one, what made you first take up the idea, right, of saying that I think this is something that needs to be shared on the public platform? It has to get to some point of intolerance for you to feel like you need to share a different perspective.
You know, honestly, when I saw that you put up that tweet about Black excellence is the scam that replaced Black power, I thought it was just a pertinent perspective. I thought the timing was correct in that we've been force-fed this idea of Black excellence for, you know, some time. And that's not to negate the value of Black people being excellent. We are inherently excellent. We are the creators of society, math, and science, and technology, and culture. But obviously, words take on different shape when they become labels, right? And the idea of Black excellence, I think, is just rooted in this Western individualism that we've adopted that's ideologically contrary to our natural state as a collective communal people, and is an easy way to conflate individual success with progress for the masses. And those things don't equal each other, right? You know, it's like you see that we're at a moment when we got the most Black millionaires, the most Black billionaires. We're always being told about this $1 trillion spending power that we have, which is massive. And yet our median Black family wealth as households is declining and is projected to reach $0 by 2050. And already the average white household is at 86 times the amount of wealth as the average Black household. And yet we got billionaires, you know. Does that say?
Lost a couple of them. You feel me? Yeah, more.
It fluctuates, you know, but I do feel like that conversation and the specific wording in which you raised it inspired me, because it's jolting. The idea that Black excellence could be a scam, that's jolting because might feel like you're negating the value of that individual growth that has been made. And that's not the case. The case is more so that we can't lose sight of the actual goal in the pursuit of personal gain. The actual goal is for us as a people to overcome the societal pressures that chain us. And one of us coming up, few of us coming up, doesn't change that.
I think we think of it as we like a dysfunctional family, right? Somebody in the family make it, right? That's their money. That's not your money.
Right.
Right? And you're supposed to cheer the person in the family that makes, which again, we family, so of course we're gonna do that, whether that's a distant cousin or not. But we're not a team, right? A team got the same mission, they got the same goal. Everybody develops themselves for the goal of the team. What started happening when we started becoming fractal, you know what I mean? And we started all picking up different flags in different wars, right? So now there's a weaponization of, black women getting their education. So now you start looking at black men, y'all stupid, right? But because when that term first came out and they say black women are most educated, they were literally talking about the statistics between black men and women, not the rest of America. But why would that needs to be showcased? Why didn't they say black men are decreasing in college enrollment, right? Why didn't they say that we never even talk about the outcome of black men going to college, taking on more debt, not increasing their income or net worth? You never even talk about none of those reasons why. But then we perpetuate as if women are on a different team while women are on the same team, right? They don't represent the studies between East Indian women and East Indian men and say that East Indian women are the most educated because they can't pit them against each other because they one team with one goal and one mind. And so I think that we've now are a collective of different agendas and what we want for ourselves, right? And most of us don't really want anything for the culture. So that's when you get this idea of boule, right? That there's this talented Tim that is essentially supposed to rule and influence the rest of everybody else, right? And we have gotten used to that. We have gotten used to, you are in a sorority, you're in a fraternity, you're a millionaire, you're a billionaire, right? But we never talk about what is the power of these organizations and their responsibility to commit to impact, right? So I'm not celebrating nothing if it don't create impact. If it don't create more power and change, I don't care if you got committed $100 billion. I don't care if you got an award from a community outside who was just boycotting the Grammys, but now when you get one, everybody's supposed to celebrate. It's a very bipolar culture because it's about celebrate individual success. And again, when I was in Japan, they're collective-minded people. They don't want to bring shame to the family. That's the idea. So if you market something or you say something, you have to do it exactly to the T. So if you ever see a Japanese person market something, the sandwich will look perfect. When you see it in person, it's going to look perfect. They don't want to bring shame to that home, right? We don't have that collectivism of thinking about each other in our actions. It's actually the opposite. So it doesn't matter if what I do is a detriment to you as long as it benefits me, you're supposed to celebrate.
Man, when I was in Japan,
so that's all.
You travel. No, something that really struck me though was I was hopping out the van. This was years ago. I used to be like a chain smoker, and I was smoking a cigarette, ash it, toss it out on the ground, and it was like, and the dude stopped me, and he just took me to the side and he was like, "Yo, like we don't do that here, So I'm like, "What do you do with your cigarettes, He said, "We carry around personal ashtrays and we put our trash in our pocket and we throw it away at trash cans that are not really all around the city. It's like, not even that it's illegal in the same way. It's that they have a collective respect for their communal space." And I thought that was such a powerful way for a society to exist, which is not just guided by fear, because obviously we have so many laws here that, we don't respect for a variety of reasons. But they're able to respect their space because they have that collectivism. And I think that's the shift to be made, is from individualism to collectivism. And the same conversation of Black excellence versus Black power pertains to what's happening in sports and the NBA, NFL, these industries that we dominate, but we have no ownership over. And the individuals, for the most part, are too in fear of losing their individual status and power to collectivize and demand equity. This is what happens in a continent where Ghana, Black people own not one of the 16 major gold mines in Ghana. South Africa. Then you see Burkina Faso and Ibrahim Traore, who are seizing back their resources, but without a collective consensus, it's going to be tough, without a collective consensus. And we need that same shift from individualism to collectivism as Black people here and as Black people globally. And now when we can connect our might here with our might on the continent, with our might in the Caribbean, and start to move as a collective unit, that's when things will really change. You see, when the Asian community experienced a day of adversity, those nations collectively placed economic repercussions on the United States, and legislation was passed the next day. Now they have less challenges than we face in different ways. You know what I mean? We have our own unique circumstances, but the fact remains that we don't move as a single unit. And I mean, that starts with us here, as we can do that within our community here as probably the most culturally impactful and influential unit on the planet. We can connect with the people in Ghana, connect with the people in Burkina Faso, make significant collaboration and coalition with them. Make significant collaboration and coalition with South Africans. Word up. Like in
she the white one. Y'all ain't with it.
In South Africa, man. Having this conversation with somebody today. South Africa, man, it can be so maddening because here we make up 13% of the population. Obviously, the white Americans hold the vast majority of the wealth. In South Africa, the Europeans make up 7% of the population, but they still hold 90% of the wealth. Individually, South Africa cannot overcome that. Individually, Ghana cannot overcome this. Individually, Nigeria can't overcome that. But taking notes from Kwame Nkrumah and from Gaddafi, who, sought to nationalize their resources and collectivize their resources. Those dreams don't have to die because those figureheads were deposed and assassinated by the CIA. We can find new pathways to address and attack. And with the advent of AI, there's just unknown unknowns that, I know that's a big part of what you're about. It's like I
talked about that earlier. Just the fact of strategic imagination, right? Which is this idea of how do you strategically embed ideas into the mind, right? We was talking about culture as its own consciousness, right? When the entity becomes complex enough, it becomes conscious. And that when we think about culture, it's something that's in motion, right? Like it's not the same culture from the 80s or the 90s or the 2000s. It's a completely different piece to that. Yeah. We don't know if we own it or not. We know we participate in it, right? But it's actually our strongest force to create the most change because it's the most influential, but we're also left defenseless because we don't understand how other people manipulate and or use us. So other communities will buy us, right? They'll buy us in their brands. They'll buy us in their deals. They buy your silence. They'll buy your greatness. As long as you don't try to use that to free another, you're good to do whatever you want to do, right? As long as you don't try to build too many schools or you don't give money to scholars and philosophers and people who have ideas that will shift the culture, you're good to have this money. So a lot of times when we see a stockpile of money from somebody, it's not worth anything to us because it can't be used for us in any meaningful way. And or if they're spending so much time doing what they're doing, they don't have any time to think about anything meaningful, right? So when I think about like what's going on today and we think about pulling from our ancient blueprints, right? Oftentimes we hear about Mansa Musa. You got a really dope Mansa Musa chain. We never talk about the system that allowed Mansa Musa to thrive. Right? It wasn't an individual that just became the richest man on the planet, right? There was a council that he was connected to. He had an advisor, and he inherited that system over there. But we don't even talk about Mali being a great empire when we talk about history. So therefore, we can't pull from what was they doing when our people had institutions and empires. What was the ancient Moors doing as they would create wazirs? Wazirs were advisors to the coach or advisors to the king or like the sultan. Then they would also have a council. So I take that same model and say, we would have to do that individually in our families, right? That there's a council, you have advisor roles, but we only have Western ideas in our mind and Western history and Western trauma. We don't have any, for the most part, the average person does not see themselves in any mythos, right? We talked about earlier how we barely get season 2 green lighted of great black films, right? Or shows because they have too much power in the imagination. So I also want to go into just that idea of like, how do we shift, right? The strategic imagination of like the global cultural consciousness. Because in Africa, they don't believe it because they never seen it, right? Anytime somebody rides, the core memory is, he'll get knocked down, right? So now you believe it, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. What are those stories that we can tell that shift the way we believe in ourselves?
Man, the conversation I was having today is the European fallacy that is their commonly held direction of misinformation that Africa is and has been an afterthought. You know, that Africa was a detour, a side quest in the pursuit of the new world. When in reality, Portugal going to find the wealth of Mansa Musa and invading West Africa was what necessitated Spain going to conquer the Americas, because Portugal was a small, like, insignificant power on the Iberian Peninsula with Spain. So Spain was like, ain't no way y'all coming up like this. So they had to go and seek conquest in America. And, you know, that brings the entire Mansa Musa conversation into the fold, because Mansa Musa's pilgrimage to Mecca, where he tanked the economy of Cairo for 12 years by distributing so much wealth and so much gold, so much generosity, bringing back scholars to build universities in Timbuktu. That act was the single most pivotal moment in the shaping of this Western world, of this auditorium we're in right now, of this city, of this nation we live in, because that was what placed the wealth of Africa on the literal map, on the Catalan Atlas in the 16th century. And when they saw that black man there with that scepter and this ball of gold, they're like, we gotta find that. You know, and I think understanding the significance of our role in history is paramount to shifting the narrative. As long as we can continue to be fooled into devaluing our contributions to society, and that's not just as chattel, but that's literally as the incentive for the creation of the modern world, and the resources, the human capital, of course, and then also the scientific and religious spaces for all of it. As long as we continue to believe the stories of devaluation that we've been given, and the narrative is allowed, the false narrative is allowed to propagate. But having conversations like these and leading somebody to say, oh man, maybe when I get home, I'm going to go research that, and shifting that mind. That's how you change the narrative in my mind. And also to tell the truth, to expose the truth, about Haiti, expose the truth about the Congo, you know what I mean? To expose the truth about the Francophone West African countries, expose the truth about Tulsa and Sweet Auburn and communities in America where our people did amass great wealth. Those are narrative shifters, and it's piece by piece, brick by brick, and storyline by storyline. So we can understand that we're actually not coming from a place of deficit. Right? I mean, like historically, our contribution is not deficit.
No, but the idea of it is this, right? When we think about our favorite philosophers, I have to say black philosopher. Otherwise, if I say philosopher, you're most likely to think of a white man and European, right? And if I tell you what is the central idea that came from each person, most likely you wouldn't know. We know their name, but we don't know their body of work and their knowledge and essential idea, right? And a culture is built off philosophies, right? When we talk about capitalism, right, Marxism, right, these are philosophies. These are ideas. Currently, we live in a world where we spread ideas, and the best one wins is what dominates the culture. So we currently going into this technological age. If we don't have our own philosophies about ways to live, ways to think, then we're stuck to adopt the philosophies that are consolidated in books, right? We're stuck to center Europeans and colonizers in the middle of our lives and only pull from that source, right? How did Tariq Ibn think when he took over Spain? Like, this should be an idea that is taught to the average person, so you walking around with the philosophy of one of the greatest thinkers in human history. But our history, that we can change that thought. But right now, we currently have the least of us that represent the rest of us, not the best of us. So we don't have scientists and scholars and engineers and philosophers and thought leaders that are the most popular. The most non-vital information is the most viral information. The problem in an intelligent age, right? They show that they actually rank like slang and the way that we speak as lower by the scales of algorithms and technology. So you get penalized and sometimes even demonetized, or they limit your reach on social media just because of the way we talk and they don't understand our nuance. Anytime you say nigga, they go rank that much lower than something else because they go consider that to be riskful or harmful. But nobody told us about these algorithms that happen behind the scenes, right? And so when I think about that number one, in this digital age, if we don't even have our ideas written down, when our children go and they ask AI a question, whose philosophy is they pulling from? Who's shaping their mind? These are very important things that we don't often have time to think about. So what I've been encouraging people, like, you tell a lot of great stories. I want to see those stories transcripted. You feel me? Put it into newsletters and books and Substack. So when the AI is pulling, they might pull from Vic Mensa's intelligence, right? And I think that that's the intentionality that we have to have during this age, right? Because the reason that they've been able to co-opt us with capitalism in the first place is because we became disconnected to the Kwame Tories, right? We don't have an economic philosophy because nobody studies Elijah Muhammad. You only study the narrative that you know about him, but not the fact that they had what today's time would be a $500 billion economic network. But we go all the way to Black Wall Street to pull influence from, though we have one that just ended in the 70s. So how do we have this big gap in our minds? So how do they take us from having our own economies, a network of militant disciplined thinking? Instead of fighting for power, we started fighting just for rights. I just want a couple more rights, a couple more trophies, a couple more dollars, and I'll be all right. Right? While the rest of all of Black America suffers. That was the great subversion. That was a demoralization. That was the influential impact that they had. I talked about this earlier. The big three ain't the most influential in the culture. It's the big 5 tech companies. So when we learn to be intentional in controlling our narratives, then young children start to decide who they want to become. And it can't be by the numbers. By the numbers is another capitalist metric. That's why we always judge whether it's good art if it hit Billboard, because it's a capitalist metric. Not if you felt something. You feel me? Not if you was connected to it. So now artists can't even make what they want because you go judge it whether other people liked it. You don't even know what to judge for yourself. If I listen to something from Vic Mensa, I'm going to think about, always judge albums on what did the artist intend to do and did he do it? Right? When I grew up in the mixtape era, I didn't care. It didn't do no numbers. You just listened to it because it was good. Right? Instead of virality, it's supposed to be connection. And as a spiritual people, we've lost that and we've become machines. Right? And so getting back our humanity, getting back our soul, right? And then actually being human in the way that we process data and information and life, that restores the culture. That's when we start saying, damn right, why would I focus on my individualism when my family ain't eating? When all my brothers is locked up, there's high suicide rates for all Black men right now. What makes Black men want to commit suicide? And you're somebody who's been diligent in sharing your story. If you can, just give us one of your mental health stories as you've been sharing on social media about how you've overcome some of, I would say, your lower times, right? And gotten past anxiety and stress and different ideations. What is a story that you can share with us now, today, that you think can help somebody else that may feel alone right now?
It was a time when I went to jail not so long ago. I was arrested at the airport for flying internationally with some things that you can't tell me. And I was deep in my meditative practice, though. I was coming back from Africa. I actually had all these mushrooms because I was cutting the antidepressant medication cold turkey after 15 years being on almost every medication. Lexapro to Prozac to Zoloft to Wellbutrin to Effexor, this long laundry list of ineffective medications, and microdosing mushrooms at the time helped me immensely. So I ended up getting locked up for it, and while I was locked up, I recognized, though, the power of my mind to overcome the circumstances. And I remember being on the phone with my team. They were telling me that the attorney at the time was going to be a $50,000 retainer, and did I want to spend it? You know, I said, man, give me the right lawyer. And I put this meditative prayer in the air, and I just thank God that the money I need to pay for this has come to me at the exact right time in the perfect way. I got out on a Wednesday, went back to Chicago on a Thursday, and went to go to a club performance. And my man handed me an envelope with the amount that I needed to the dollar. And that was transformative to me, because there's been so many times in my life when, I'm sure like so many of us, my needs pushed me out of my integrity, you know, found me kicking the door, found me hitting a lick, found me robbing somebody that looked like me. And ultimately, like, the karmic consequence of that always caught up to me too. And once I learned that by just pure faith, belief, and, you know, righteous action, righteous energy, that I could attract what I needed. It changed my entire strategy, you know, and as it pertains to not only my mental health, but my accumulation of wealth, my relationships. And on the other token, breaking free of that pharmaceutical Ferris wheel, you know, that hamster wheel of pharmaceutical drugs, in so many ways is intended to keep us on the string. You know, they want you stacking, doubling the medicines. These companies, they work with each other. So this one is actually a booster for that one if it doesn't work. And then if you get off it, it makes you more depressed than you were before. And, you know, our people have had these, have had indigenous medicines and holistic strategies for health for millennia, and returning to those. And it might not be psychedelics, you know what I mean? It might be as simple as meditation and silence and sound and your diet. I mean, our diet is one of the most critical factors in our health, but you can be your medicine or your poison. Man, I was eating these jerk wings last night. That was my poison. And I feel it today, you know, just transforming the lifestyle. You know what I mean? I think that's step one. And understanding mind over matter. You know what I mean? That's just see mental energy focus right there.
Yeah, that's that mushroom coffee. Not the magic shrooms, but they adaptogenic shrooms.
So exactly.
You know what I'm talking about?
Those two, the reishi, the lion's mane, the cordyceps. All of that is so valuable, man. Like, you can break free of the pharmaceutical industry with this type.
That's a good commercial right there. In real, first of all, I want to say my meditation, it never worked that fast. You know what I'm saying? I did the one you did, first of all. I think all black men do right now. But no, for real, in my own family, you know, I got 6 brothers, right? 2 of my brothers just got out of prison, right? And I see the mental health challenges that they've went through. I've seen bipolarism in my family. I've literally sat in the house and watched my uncles do crack and have to go to school the next morning. You know what I mean? And people wonder why I'm tripping. You feel me? Like, there's so many things that we go through in our lives that most of the time we never even speak to nobody about. Then sometimes we live in these caged houses, in these neighborhoods, right? And we don't give anybody to affirm us or give us guidance. We don't go touch the ground, go to a park, do a walk. We don't learn methods, right? So that we can actually breathe and feel free, right? Freedom don't happen because you outside of jail. You feel me? It starts when you start living according, right, to things that make you feel fulfilled and alive. And so now that we don't have enough encouragement that reinforces our belief in self, right, and that this world is mine. Like when I walk outside, I don't know if the world is mine unless I project it, and nobody's reinforcing your identity of who you are, so I got to develop an ego, right? Then I got to develop over-relevance. So now I'm going to compete with everybody next to me because I need to be more important than you instead of what can I add. But if I was developed correctly in a household and I had that stimulation already, I wouldn't be seeking it, right? And so a lot of times we're seeking stimulation and we're seeking the thing that we're supposed to naturally be able to do, which is bring ideas into reality. But when we frustrated financially, you understand me? We frustrated politically, we frustrated in the family. That frustration we take out on the people closest to us, right? And then it becomes poverty-induced stress disorder. Now we don't have the money or a wealthy enough environment to get us out of that. So now we have to start seeking, number one, you talked about eating them wings yesterday and you don't feel good. But it's the same thing when somebody gets stressed out. What was you consuming yesterday on social media? Right? We don't even read anymore. You know what I'm saying? They said the average person can't read past 19 minutes. Like, without reading, you don't even develop a mind that has that cognitive power, right, to process the world around you. And again, there's so many things happening. When do you have time to focus on yourself?
Man, I'm going to leave you with this story. So a brother of mine, his name is Musa. He was sentenced to 25 years as a 14-year-old. Ain't that a travesty? And I met him when I was around 26, 27. Started building with him, working on bringing some programs into the prison to help him get good time. COVID hit. Everything came to a dead stop. I asked God, what's the meaning of this? And a few days later, Musa asked me to get in touch with a law group in Chicago called the Uptown People's Law Center that was doing prisoner release for elderly and sick inmates during COVID. Neither of which applied to Musa. But I said, I'll try. I don't know him. I'll shoot the shot. I sent a Hail Mary message to the governor's desk. He still had 12 years left on the sentence. All he could think about was coming home. He said, I can't write. I can't draw. I can't even write a letter to my mother. All I could think about is coming home. I'm like, nigga, you got 12 years left. You might think about some other shit. That was my mortal mind. I sent this Hail Mary pass to the governor's desk. 3 days later, Musa came home 12 years early. That taught me something so valuable. Because I had doubt in my heart. And I realized that we have to have the courage to believe in the unseen to see our liberation.
So I want to thank everybody for showing up. Please give a round of applause to my brother Vic Mensa. For sure. Man. I think it was something powerful that you just said. Give me 1 second, bro. Cut the music for a second. He said something very powerful, man. The belief in the unseen. That's called faith. You know what I mean? And that's something that we've lost a lot. We don't evoke God enough in our circles, in our minds, in our thoughts. You feel me? As we move.
and we're not operating with enough confidence in knowing who you are. So you got to intentionally seek information and knowledge that reinforce that confidence. No matter what the world is telling you, no matter what's going on in your environment, you have to force yourself to believe it. That's what I do every single day. I'm forcing myself only to listen to information. I intentionally go on AI and only seek information and knowledge that reinforce that I'm a God. I don't know what your sensibilities are when you come to religion and things of that nature, but I'm speaking about it in the sense that if my Father is God, then I'm just like Him. And I'm going to mirror that image in the way that I produce my mind into reality. And I'm going to connect with other individuals who have that same type of power and resonant spirit. You got to stop being around weak individuals and allowing them to stay weak because they're going to bring you down. You got to have that type of power. Either you focus on bringing yourself up, or when you're around other individuals, you force them to be in their God-likeness. I'm 19 Keys, just being on High Lvl Conversation. I appreciate it. You ain't nobody gonna save us. We gotta save ourselves.
Give it up for 19 Keys. Give it up for Vic Mensa. Boston, make some noise. Come on.
High Lvl Conversation. Tap in with the guy.
It's 19 keys, above 19 keys. The execution of knowledge is power. Teaching me how to be a god. From a boy to a man, and ultimately back into the natural state of being, into a god.
Hugh Lounge in Boston.
Late night, everybody was taking shots and enjoying themselves. This morning, we was actually taking shots of coffee, re-stimulating ourselves and having a connection. Not just networking, but it's real connection. Having a tribe, having a friend group.
My energy is like on high frequency here.
We want God to work for us, but we don't work for God.
Because I hear a lot of people say, I'm just supporting you. I'm like, no, support yourself.
When I talk about supermind, it's making those conversations even higher level.
Definitely high level vibes, high level energy.
I thought it was so dope. I had to come out.
I love the coffee. It has lion's mane and other things that help with mental focus and clarity.
The coffee, the cordyceps, the lion's mane. We're trying to get you to activate the clarity in yourself because you're lost right now.
Self-love is a reflection of all love. So first I want to thank 19 Keys because he helped me fall more in love with myself.
The goal is just optimizing on whatever your skills and gift are at the highest level.
We all have a starting point, and everybody's starting point is going to be different.
When I'm doing all this work behind the scenes, I got to get on my Superman coffee to keep me going.
I think it's such an awesome opportunity to come and really have an intimate conversation.
There's no way that I couldn't show up, show out.
Thanks to Rob Hugh Lounge in Boston, we was able to have a cup of coffee with the community. If you get some of that Supermind coffee, it's joy in a cup, joy in a cup, joy in a cup, joy in a cup. The world may question you, but never question yourself. One thing for sure, the light always comes with darkness. The same thing that make you successful be the same thing that break you. If you don't have self-awareness, this will be the thing that destroys you. But if you know yourself, everything is meant to make you stronger. Nothing can break you down. In the words of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, every knock is a boost.